Imagine standing at your husband's funeral, your heart already shattered, when your phone buzzes with a message that stops your breath. He's alive. That's not who you think is in that coffin. Trust no one. What would you do if the people you loved most, your own flesh and blood, were hiding a secret so dark it could destroy everything you believe in? Welcome to Voices of Auntie Rose, where stories of family, forgiveness, resilience, and the courage to rise above betrayal come to life with heart and soul. We're so glad you're here, joining a community that celebrates the unbreakable human spirit. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an inspiring story. And it would be amazing if you could like this video, share it, or drop a comment letting us know what time it is and which city or country you're watching from. Your shares and comments are the greatest gift, the powerful inspiration that keeps this channel growing and spreading meaningful life lessons every single day. Now, let's dive into today's story. My name is Margaret Sullivan, and I'm 72 years old. What I'm about to tell you shattered everything I believed about motherhood, love, and the sacred bond between a mother and her children. The memorial service for my husband Thomas was supposed to be the most devastating day of my existence. There, standing beside his casket at Riverside Memorial Gardens in Boston, I received a text message from an unknown number that sent ice through my veins. The message read, "He's alive. That's not who you think is in that coffin. Trust no one." My hands trembled so violently I nearly dropped my iPhone. "Who is this?" I typed back, my arthritic fingers struggling with the touchscreen. The response came immediately, making my 72-year-old heart skip several beats. "I can't say. They're watching. Don't trust your daughters." That moment tore my world in half. My legs buckled, and I had to grab the mahogany casket for support, feeling the cold metal handles under my palm. I looked across the funeral home's elegant viewing room at my twin daughters, Victoria and Stephanie, both 45, standing there in their designer black Armani suits with expressions that suddenly seemed too composed, too calculated. Their tears looked rehearsed. Their embraces felt as cold as the February wind outside. For 48 years, Thomas had been my everything, my anchor, my best friend, my reason for waking up each morning. We'd built our life together from nothing in a small apartment in Somerville, sharing dreams as modest as they were precious. I'd worked double shifts as a cardiac nurse at Massachusetts General Hospital while Thomas built his plumbing business from scratch, working 18-hour days with hands that became permanently stained with grease and determination. We'd been poor but deliriously happy. We had something that $400,000 in the bank couldn't buy: genuine, unconditional love. I remember our first conversation like it was yesterday. It was a Tuesday morning in 1976. I was rushing to catch the Red Line train to work, wearing my only decent dress, a navy blue polyester number from Filene's basement, and shoes I'd resoled 3 times. Thomas stepped out of his shop on Cambridge Street, his hands black with pipe compound, and smiled at me with a shyness that made my heart stop. "Morning, Miss Margaret," he said in that gentle Boston accent. "Your car giving you trouble again?" I didn't even own a car, but I invented an excuse just to talk to him for 5 more minutes. That conversation led to dates at the North End pizzerias we couldn't really afford, then to promises whispered on the Esplanade under the 4th of July fireworks, and finally to a simple wedding at St. Mary's with only 20 guests but infinite hope. The first decade was brutal. We lived in a 2-bedroom duplex in Revere, with windows that rattled in winter storms and pipes that froze every January. When it rained, we'd position every pot and bucket we owned throughout the house to catch leaks. But we were happy, God, we were so happy. When Victoria and Stephanie were born unexpected twins at my age of 27, I thought my heart would explode with joy. They were perfect babies with their father's strong jawline and my green eyes. I raised them with every ounce of love in my body, going without new clothes for 15 years so they could have the best schools, the best opportunities. Thomas was an incredible father. He'd take them to Fenway Park on Sundays, teaching them to keep score and appreciate the beauty of a perfect double play. He'd show them how to use tools in his workshop, telling them stories about his grandfather who'd built half the brownstones in Back Bay. We were a close family. Or so I believed with every fiber of my being. As my daughters grew into successful women, Victoria becoming a corporate attorney, and Stephanie a financial advisor, something shifted. They started looking at our modest Medford home with barely concealed disdain. Their visits became less frequent, their phone calls shorter and more transactional. Standing there at Thomas's funeral, that mysterious text burning in my mind, I noticed details I'd been blind to before. Victoria kept checking her Rolex, the $30,000 one I'd helped her buy for her big promotion. Stephanie was texting on her phone even as the minister spoke about eternal rest. Neither of them had really cried since we'd arrived. The worst part? Just 3 weeks ago, Thomas had told me something that now made my blood run cold. "Maggie," he'd said over our morning coffee in Boston Globe, "I think the girls are up to something. They keep asking about our life insurance, our retirement accounts. They want us to sign some papers. Something doesn't feel right." I dismissed his concerns, telling him he was being paranoid. Our daughters loved us. They were just concerned about our future. How wrong I had been. How catastrophically, heartbreakingly wrong. The mysterious text haunted me throughout the entire service. As the minister droned on about resurrection and eternal peace, my mind raced back through 48 years of memories, searching for signs I'd missed, red flags I'd ignored in my desperate need to believe my daughters loved me unconditionally. The truth was, looking back now with eyes suddenly cleared of maternal blindness, the warning signs had been there for years, decades even. It started when the girls graduated from Harvard Law and Wharton Business School. I'd emptied our retirement fund $320,000 to pay for their educations, telling Thomas we'd rebuild it later. "They're our legacy," I'd said, kissing his worried forehead. "What better investment than our daughters' futures?" But something changed after graduation. Victoria, with her law degree and sharp tongue, began dropping comments about our quaint little house in Medford. Stephanie, armed with her MBA and calculator for a heart, would scrutinize our finances during visits, shaking her head at our poor investment strategies. They'd exchange glances across our dining table, the same oak table where we'd helped them with homework for 18 years, glances that spoke volumes about their contempt for our simple life. The worst transformation came when Victoria married Harrison Blackwell, a hedge fund manager who never bothered hiding his disdain for what he called our working-class aesthetic. The first time he visited our home, wearing a $10,000 Brioni suit, he literally wiped his hand after shaking Thomas's calloused one. During dinner, he pushed my homemade lasagna around his plate, the same recipe Victoria had begged for every birthday throughout childhood, and whispered to her, loud enough for me to hear, "Next time we'll take them to the Capitol Grill. This is rustic." Stephanie wasn't much better after she started dating Marcus Chen, a tech entrepreneur who spoke to us like we were elderly toddlers who couldn't understand basic concepts. "You really should digitize your life," he'd lecture, waving his latest iPhone model. "Paper records are so last century. At your age, cognitive decline makes it hard to keep track of physical documents." Cognitive decline. I was a cardiac nurse for 35 years. I'd saved more lives than he'd sent emails, but suddenly I was too senile to manage paper. The physical symptoms hit me right there in the funeral home. My stomach churned violently, bile rising in my throat. The room began spinning, and I gripped the pew in front of me so hard my knuckles went white. 72 years old, and I felt like I was having my first panic attack. My chest tightened. I knew the symptoms of a heart attack intimately, and this was dangerously close. "Mother, are you all right?" Victoria's voice cut through my spiral, but it wasn't concern I heard, it was irritation. She glanced at her phone again. "We need to wrap this up. I have a conference call with Tokyo at 3. A conference call, her father's funeral, and she had a conference call. "I need air," I managed to whisper, stumbling toward the exit. Neither daughter moved to help me. Instead, I felt the steady arm of Mrs. Chen, no relation to Marcus, our neighbor for 20 years, who guided me outside. "Margaret, honey, you're white as a sheet," she said, her weathered face creased with genuine worry. "Should I call an ambulance?" "No," I gasped, gulping the cold Boston air. "Just give me a moment." But I couldn't tell her about the text. Couldn't voice the horrifying suspicion growing in my gut like a cancer. Because if Thomas was alive, if that message was real, then who was in that coffin? And why were my daughters so eager to bury him? My mind flew back to 3 weeks ago, that Sunday morning when everything changed. Thomas had gone to his workshop in the garage, same as every Sunday for 20 years. He liked to tinker, to fix things for neighbors who couldn't afford professional repairs. The girls had been visiting, unusual for them both to come together without a holiday or birthday to prompt it. "Dad's getting too old for this," Stephanie had said, watching him through the kitchen window. "That workshop is a death trap. All those tools, chemicals, electrical equipment. One accident, and she'd shrugged, letting the implication hang in the air like a poison. We should really update your insurance policies, Victoria had added, pulling out a leather portfolio. At your ages, with Dad's workshop habits, you're underinsured. We've taken the liberty of researching some options. They'd presented us with papers, policies, documents to sign. Thomas had resisted, but I'd been swayed by their apparent concern. They're just trying to help, Tom, I'd said that night in bed. Maybe we should listen. The irony tasted bitter now. We'd increased our life insurance to $2 million per person, $4 million total, enough to make anyone contemplate the unthinkable. The accident, God, even calling it that felt like betrayal, now happened the following Tuesday. A catastrophic fall from the workshop ladder, they said, massive head trauma. Victoria had been the one to find him, arriving for an unexpected visit at 7 in the morning. Who visits their parents at 7 on a Tuesday? Everything after that moved with suspicious efficiency. Stephanie handled the hospital, the doctors, the death certificate. Victoria managed the funeral arrangements, the insurance claims, the estate lawyers. They'd turned our tragedy into a well-oiled machine, and I'd been too destroyed to question any of it. But now, standing outside Riverside Memorial Gardens, watching my breath fog in the February cold, pieces of a horrifying puzzle clicked together. Thomas's workshop ladder, he'd replaced it just last month. Brand new, state-of-the-art with safety locks. His fear of heights, he never climbed past the 3rd rung without me spotting him. The timing of the girls' visit, their insistence on insurance, their complete lack of genuine grief. Mrs. Sullivan? A young man approached, maybe 25, wearing a Boston University sweatshirt. I'm James Morrison. I work at Callahan's Hardware. Mr. Sullivan helped me fix my mom's car last month when we couldn't afford a mechanic. I just wanted to pay my respects and... He paused, looking uncomfortable. And to tell you something weird. My heart hammered. What kind of weird? I saw Mr. Sullivan at the store yesterday. At least, I thought it was him. Same walk, same navy cap he always wore. But when I called out, he practically ran away. Must have been my mistake, right? I mean, he's... James gestured toward the funeral home. Yesterday. Someone who looked exactly like Thomas was seen yesterday. The text message burned in my mind. He's alive. I walked back into the funeral home on legs made of jelly, my entire world tilting off its axis. My daughters stood by the casket, heads together, whispering. As I approached, I heard Stephanie say, "The insurance pays out in 48 hours. We can have power of attorney by Friday if she signs." "She will," Victoria responded. "She's so grief-stricken she'll sign anything. And if she doesn't..." She made a gesture I couldn't interpret, but Stephanie's cold smile in response made my blood freeze. These weren't my daughters. These were strangers wearing my daughters' faces, predators who'd emerged from the children I'd nursed through scarlet fever, taught to ride bikes on the Minuteman Trail, held through teenage heartbreaks. The transformation was complete, and I was only now seeing the monsters they'd become. The weeks following Thomas's supposed death revealed the true depth of my daughter's transformation, from the babies I'd carried for 9 agonizing months to the cold-blooded strangers they'd become. The metamorphosis hadn't happened overnight. No, it was a slow poison that had been seeping into our family's foundation for years, and I'd been too blinded by maternal love to see it. It began with their teenage years at Phillips Academy Andover, that prestigious boarding school that cost $65,000 per year per child. Thomas had taken on extra contracts, working himself to exhaustion, while I picked up overnight shifts at Mass General, surviving on 3 hours of sleep just to afford their better future. We'd attended every parent weekend, driving up in our rusty Ford Taurus, while other parents arrived in Mercedes and BMWs. Victoria had made us park 3 blocks away, claiming she needed the walk to prepare mentally for exams. The memory stabbed through me now like a surgical scalpel. She'd been ashamed of us even then. At 15. And Stephanie? She'd introduced Thomas to her roommate's parents as the help when he'd worn his work clothes to move her into her dorm. The help. Her own father, who'd sold his prized vintage Harley-Davidson, his only luxury in 40 years, to buy her a laptop for school. Back in our Medford home after the funeral, I sat in Thomas's recliner, still indented with the shape of his body, and tried to eat the casserole Mrs. Chen had brought over. The first bite triggered violent nausea. I barely made it to the bathroom before everything came up, my body rejecting food just as my mind rejected the reality of what my daughters had become. The doorbell rang while I was still on the bathroom floor, my knees bruised from the ceramic tile, my throat burning with acid. Through the security camera Thomas had installed last year. Can never be too careful. Maggie, I saw Victoria standing there, checking her Cartier watch impatiently. "Mother, I know you're in there," she called through the door. "We need to discuss the estate. Open up." The estate. Not how are you coping? Not do you need anything? The estate. I dragged myself to the door, still in my funeral dress, now wrinkled and stained with tears and worse. Victoria's nose wrinkled when she saw me. "Godmother, you look terrible. Have you been drinking?" "Your father just died," I whispered, my voice raw. "Yes, well, life goes on," she said, pushing past me into the house. She surveyed our living room with the calculating eyes of an appraiser. This place could sell for $800,000 in this market. More if we stage it properly. "Sell?" The word came out as a croak. "This is my home." "Was your home?" Victoria corrected, pulling out her iPad. "Now it's an asset. A 72-year-old woman doesn't need 4 bedrooms and all this maintenance." Stephanie's already researched some lovely assisted living facilities. Sunrise Senior Living in Brookline is top-rated. Assisted living. They wanted to warehouse me like expired goods. "Your father built this deck with his own hands," I said, gesturing toward the back door. "You took your first steps in that kitchen." Stephanie said her first word right there by the Stephanie. "Sentiment doesn't pay bills, Mother." Victoria's voice cut like glass. "The insurance money, plus the house sale, plus Dad's business assets, we're looking at nearly $5 million, properly invested, that could generate significant returns." "We?" My legs started shaking. "There is no we, Victoria. This is my money, my house, my life." She laughed. Actually laughed, a sound so cold it could have frozen the Charles River. "Mother, please. You're clearly not thinking rationally. Look at yourself. You can barely stand. You're emotionally compromised. Stephanie and I have already consulted with Dr. Reginald Foster about having you evaluated." Dr. Foster. I knew that name. He was the psychiatrist who'd testified in the Whitman case, declaring an 80-year-old widow incompetent so her children could seize her $12 million estate. "Get out," I whispered. "Excuse me?" "Get out." The scream tore from my throat with decades of suppressed rage. "Get out of my house, you vulture. You're not my daughter loved me. My daughter made me Mother's Day cards with crayons and called me her hero. You're just a monster wearing her face." Victoria's expression shifted to something even colder, if that was possible. "Perfect. This outburst will be very helpful for the competency hearing. I'm recording, by the way." She held up her phone. Elderly woman, recently widowed, showing signs of paranoid delusions and aggressive behavior. After she left, I collapsed on the living room floor, my body convulsing with sobs so violent, I thought my ribs might crack. The photo albums on the coffee table mocked me hundreds of pictures of birthday parties, Christmas mornings, family vacations to Cape Cod. In every photo, I'm beaming at my girls while they look past the camera, probably calculating the value of everything in frame. My phone buzzed. Another unknown number, but I recognized the area code Vermont. "Margaret? Don't hang up. This is really Thomas. I'm alive. They tried to kill me, but I survived." The man in the coffin. "God help me, Maggie. It's a homeless veteran from the shelter. Same height, same build. Our daughters are monsters." The phone slipped from my numb fingers. The room spun wildly, and I barely registered my head hitting the coffee table as I fell. When I woke, Stephanie was standing over me, her phone in one hand and a glass of water in the other. "Mother, you've had a fall. Drink this." The water had a bitter taste. My nursing training screamed warnings, but my body was too weak to resist. As the room began to blur, I heard her speaking to someone on the phone. "Yes, Dr. Foster. She's showing clear signs of dementia, falling, hallucinating, making wild accusations. We need that competency hearing expedited." "Yes, Thursday works perfectly." Thursday. 3 days to prove I wasn't losing my mind, when the truth was that I'd already lost something far worse, the daughters I'd thought I'd raised. The last thing I saw before the drug darkness claimed me was the family portrait on the mantel. Thomas and me, young and hopeful. holding two infant girls who would grow up to destroy everything we'd built with love. The irony was perfect in its cruelty. I'd spent 48 years nurturing two beautiful monsters, and now they were ready to devour their creator. But Thomas was alive somewhere, and that meant war. If my daughters wanted to play this game, they'd forgotten one crucial thing: I might be 72, but I'd been a cardiac nurse in Boston's roughest emergency rooms. I'd fought death itself for 35 years. And I'd learned that sometimes to save a life, you have to be willing to break a few ribs. I woke up in my own bed, disoriented and nauseated, with the taste of sedatives still coating my tongue. The digital clock read 3:17 a.m. How long had I been unconscious? My nurse's training kicked in, checking my pulse, examining my pupils in the bathroom mirror. Dilated. Slow response. They'd given me enough benzodiazepine to knock out someone half my age. Downstairs I heard voices, Victoria and Stephanie, but also others' male voices I didn't recognize. Creeping to the top of the stairs, gripping the banister Thomas had installed after my knee surgery 5 years ago, I strained to listen. "The competency hearing is Thursday," Victoria was saying. "Dr. Foster will testify that she's showing clear signs of vascular dementia. The falls, the paranoid delusions about Dad being alive, the aggressive outbursts, it's textbook. What about the house?" That was Harrison, Victoria's husband. "Market value's actually closer to $900,000. My contact at Coldwell Banker says we could push it to $950 with the right buyer. Split 4 ways, that's still only $237 each," Marcus, Stephanie's boyfriend, calculated. "The real money's in the insurance and the business. Sullivan Plumbing has contracts worth $2.8 million over the next 3 years. 4 ways. They were already dividing my life into portions while I was still breathing. "Mother's got another 20 years in her, realistically," Stephanie said, her voice clinical. "Sunrise Senior Living costs $8,000 a month. That's almost $2 million over 20 years. We need to be smart about this." "Not if we go with Golden Years in Worcester," Harrison suggested. $3,000 a month, and they're not as particular about medical oversight. They were shopping for the cheapest warehouse to store me in, like comparing prices on storage units. My legs began trembling so violently I had to sit down on the top step. The photo hanging on the stairway wall, Stephanie's medical school graduation, seemed to mock me. I'd worked triple shifts to pay for her MCAT prep courses, developed arthritis from years of standing in the ER, sacrificed my own health so she could become a doctor. Now she was calculating how to minimize the cost of keeping me alive. "There's another option," Marcus said, his voice dropping. "My cousin knows someone who specializes in accelerated estate resolution. Makes things look natural. Heart failure, stroke, very clean, very professional." The bile rose so fast I couldn't stop it. I vomited right there on the stairs, the sound echoing through the house. Footsteps rushed toward me. "Mother." Victoria appeared at the bottom of the stairs, her face a mask of false concern. "Oh my God, are you okay? You shouldn't be wandering around at night, you could fall again." "I heard you," I gasped between dry heaves. "I heard everything. You're planning to kill me." Victoria's expression didn't even flicker. "Mother, you're hallucinating again. These paranoid delusions are exactly why we need to get you proper care. Stephanie, call Dr. Foster. Tell him she's having another episode." "No." I tried to stand, but my legs wouldn't cooperate. The drugs were still in my system, making everything feel like moving through molasses. "I'm calling the police." "You're all conspiring to." "To what?" Harrison appeared beside Victoria, his 6'4" frame blocking my path down the stairs. "Tell them your daughters are concerned about your declining mental health? That we're trying to get you the care you need? Go ahead, call them." He was right. Who would believe me? A recently widowed 72-year-old woman, found covered in vomit, ranting about murder conspiracies. Against 2 successful, respectable daughters with spotless reputations and medical experts on their payroll. "Where's my phone?" I demanded. "You dropped it when you fell," Stephanie said sweetly, climbing the stairs with a glass of water and more pills. "Here, take these. They'll help you sleep." "Get away from me." I swatted the glass from her hand, sending it shattering against the wall. The sound was satisfying, a small act of rebellion against the prison they were building around me. Victoria sighed dramatically. Another violent outburst. "Stephanie, make sure you document this for Dr. Foster." They left me there on the stairs, covered in my own vomit, shaking with rage and terror. But as the sun began to rise, painting the walls with pale pink light, something shifted inside me. The despair crystallized into determination. They thought I was weak, helpless, already defeated. They'd forgotten that I'd survived 48 Boston winters, raised twins alone while Thomas worked nights, fought off a mugger with nothing but my purse and pure adrenaline when I was 65. I crawled back to my bedroom and locked the door. In my closet, behind Thomas's old Navy uniforms that I couldn't bear to donate, was the emergency cash he'd always insisted we keep $10,000 in small bills. "Just in case, Maggie," he'd said. "You never know when you might need to run." Had he suspected even then? Had he known our daughters were capable of this? I also found the burner phone he'd bought during the pandemic, insisting we needed backups for everything. With shaking fingers, I dialed the number from the text message, the one that claimed Thomas was alive. "Maggie?" His voice, oh God, his actual voice. "Maggie, is that you?" "Tom," I sobbed. "Tom, they're going to kill me. Thursday. The competency hearing is Thursday, and then—" "Listen to me," he interrupted, his voice urgent. "I'm with Detective Morrison from Boston PD. We've been building a case, but we need more time. You have to survive until Thursday, Maggie." "Can you do that?" "They drugged me. They're watching everything I do." Why did they?" "The homeless veteran, Eddie Montrose. They paid him to help move some furniture, then poisoned his coffee with the same sedatives they've been giving you, but a lethal dose. When he passed out, they staged the workshop accident. I was supposed to be working that morning, but I'd gone to buy you those orchids you love from the flower market. When I came back, I saw them loading what they thought was my body. I've been hiding ever since, gathering evidence. My beautiful, brilliant husband. Even in his supposed death, he was protecting me. There's more, Maggie. They've been planning this for years. I found emails, contracts, forged documents. They've already sold the business to Harrison's company for a fraction of its value, backdated to before my death. They've been slowly poisoning you with small doses of benzodiazepine in your tea, making you seem confused and forgetful. Building a case for incompetence. Every cup of tea Stephanie had lovingly prepared for me. Every concerned visit when Victoria brought me my vitamins. It had all been a long, careful assassination of my credibility, my autonomy, my life. "What do I do?" I whispered. "Survive. Play along. Let them think you're broken. And whatever you do, don't drink or eat anything they give you. Detective Morrison will be at the hearing. We're going to expose everything." "I love you, Thomas Sullivan," I said, meaning it more than I'd ever meant anything. "I love you too, Maggie. Now destroy this phone and pretend you're the confused old woman they want you to be. 3 more days. You can do this." I ended the call and smashed the phone with Thomas's hammer, flushing the pieces down the toilet. Then I looked at myself in the mirror, hollow-eyed, gray-skinned, looking every one of my 72 years plus a dozen more. 3 days to pretend to be dying while fighting to stay alive. 3 days to let my daughters believe they'd won while gathering my strength for war. I thought of those 2 pink bundles the nurse had placed in my exhausted arms 45 years ago. "Congratulations, Mrs. Sullivan," she'd said. 2 perfect girls. Perfect monsters, as it turned out. But they'd made one crucial mistake: they'd left me alive. And a mother's rage, when properly channeled, could move mountains or bury the children who tried to bury her. The morning after my conversation with Thomas, I performed the greatest acting role of my life. When Victoria arrived at 7 sharp with her leather briefcase full of documents, I was sitting in the kitchen, staring blankly at cold coffee I hadn't touched. "Mother, you look awful," she said, though satisfaction gleamed in her eyes. "Did you sleep at all?" I don't remember," I mumbled, letting my hand shake as I reached for the cup. "Everything's so fuzzy since, and her father. Dad's death has been hard on all of us," she said, pulling out a stack of papers. "Which is why we need to make sure you're taken care of. These are just some routine documents. Power of attorney forms, transfer of assets for safekeeping, standard stuff." Standard stuff. She was asking me to sign away my entire life, and she called it standard stuff. I pretended to squint at the papers, letting my reading glasses slip down my nose. The words are all jumbled. I can't. "Victoria, honey, remember when you were 7 and had that terrible fever? I stayed up for 3 straight nights, putting cold washcloths on your forehead, singing that Beatles song you loved. "Mother, focus," she snapped, then caught herself. "I mean, try to focus. This is important." "But I wasn't done. You said I was your guardian angel. You made me a Mother's Day card with macaroni glued to construction paper. It said World's Best Mommy, but you spelled world wrong, WURLD. I still have it in my jewelry box upstairs, next to your first tooth, and that little hospital bracelet from when you were born." For just a moment, something flickered across Victoria's face. Not remorse, she was too far gone for that, but discomfort. Like a wolf being reminded it was once a puppy. "Just sign here," she said, pushing the papers toward me. "I'll explain everything later when you're feeling better." I picked up the pen with a trembling hand, started to write my name, then stopped. This pen. Tom gave me this pen for our 25th anniversary. Mont Blanc. Said I deserved beautiful things. I let tears roll down my cheeks, real tears, because the memory was real, even if my confusion wasn't. He saved for 6 months to buy it. "Mother, please." The doorbell interrupted her. Through the window, I saw Mrs. Chen and, surprisingly, Father Michael from Street. Catherine's, where we'd baptized the girls 45 years ago. "I'll get it," Victoria said quickly, but I was already shuffling toward the door. "Margaret, dear," Father Michael said, his Irish accent still thick after 50 years in Boston. "I heard about Thomas. I'm so deeply sorry. May I come in?" "Of course, Father." I clutched his arm like a lifeline. "And Mrs. Chen, you're so kind to come." Victoria's jaw clenched. Witnesses were clearly not part of her plan. "Actually, Mother needs her rest," she started. "Nonsense," Mrs. Chen interrupted. "Margaret needs friends right now. Father, did you know Margaret volunteered at the church food bank every Saturday for 20 years? Even when the girls were babies, she'd bring them in their strollers." "Indeed," Father Michael said, settling his considerable frame into Thomas's recliner. "And Victoria and Stephanie were such beautiful children. I remember their first communion. Margaret made their dresses by hand because the store-bought ones were too expensive." Victoria's phone rang. "It's the office. I have to take this." She stepped outside, shooting me a look that promised consequences. The moment she left, I grabbed Father Michael's hand. "Father, I need you to remember everything you see and hear today. Everything. Can you do that?" His eyes sharpened. "Margaret, are you in danger?" "Yes, but I can't explain now. Just witness. Please." "Mrs." Chen moved closer. "Margaret, I saw strange men here at 3 a.m. Should I call someone?" "No. Not yet. But thank you for seeing. Thank you for remembering." Victoria returned, her fake smile stretched tight. "Father, Mrs. Chen, I appreciate you stopping by, but Mother has a doctor's appointment." "No, I don't," I said, letting confusion creep back into my voice. "Do I? I don't remember. Everything's so mixed up since the accident." "What accident?" Father Michael asked. "Dad's workshop accident," Victoria said quickly. Too quickly. "But Thomas was terrified of heights," Mrs. Chen interjected. "Remember when my gutters needed cleaning? He said he'd pay someone else rather than go up that ladder." Victoria's face flushed. "People do unexpected things. Now, if you'll excuse us—" Actually, Father Michael stood, his 6'3" frame towering over Victoria. "I'd like to pray with Margaret before I go. Would you join us, Victoria, like old times?" The look of pure hatred that flashed across my daughter's face would have killed a lesser man. But Father Michael had survived the troubles in Belfast before coming to America. He didn't flinch. "I don't pray anymore," Victoria said flatly. "Such a shame," Father Michael replied. "You used to have such faith. You once told me you wanted to be a nun. Help the poor. What happened to that little girl?" "She grew up and realized God doesn't pay student loans," Victoria snapped. The room fell silent. Mrs. Chen gasped softly. Even I, in my performed confusion, felt the blasphemy of it. "I see," Father Michael said quietly. "Well, I'll pray for you anyway, Victoria, and for your sister, and especially for your mother, who deserves better than my—" "Then what?" Harrison appeared in the doorway, having entered without knocking. "My own son-in-law treating my home like his property. Better than family looking out for her interests?" "Looking out for whose interests?" Mrs. Chen demanded, surprising us all with her ferocity. I've watched Margaret give everything to those girls for 45 years. Everything. She went without lunch for months to buy Victoria's prom dress. She cleaned office buildings at night to pay for Stephanie's SAT tutoring. And now you vultures circle her like she's carrion. How dare you, Harrison started. How dare you? Mrs. Chen stood, all 5 feet of her trembling with rage. You park your Tesla in her driveway like you own the place. You inventory her possessions when you think she's sleeping. Oh yes, I've seen you with your clipboard, pricing out her furniture like an estate sale. My heart swelled. These people, these true friends, saw what was happening. I wasn't alone. This is family business, Victoria said coldly. Mother, tell them to leave. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, the baby I'd nursed through colic, who'd screamed for 14 hours straight until my ears rang. I'd walked miles around our tiny apartment, singing, bouncing, praying for relief. Now she wanted to silence the only people trying to protect me. I don't know what to do, I whispered, perfectly playing the confused elderly woman. Tom always handled these things. Where's Tom? He should be home by now. Victoria seized on this. You see? She's declining rapidly. She thinks Dad's still alive. This is exactly why. A crash from upstairs interrupted her. We all froze. What was that? Father Michael asked. Nothing. The cat, probably Victoria started. We don't have a cat, I said. We haven't had a cat since Whiskers died in 2015. Another crash. Then footsteps. Heavy ones. Someone's up there, Mrs. Chen whispered. Harrison pulled out his phone. I'm calling the police. No, Victoria said too quickly. I mean, it's probably just Stephanie. She has a key. But Stephanie walked through the front door at that moment, Marcus behind her. What's everyone doing here? She asked, surveying the crowded living room. The footsteps upstairs continued. Slower now. Deliberate. Then, at the top of the stairs, a figure appeared. My blood turned to ice water. My performance of confusion became real shock, because standing there, covered in dirt and what looked like dried blood, was Eddie Montrose, the homeless veteran they'd supposedly buried as Thomas. And he was very much alive. Eddie Montrose swayed at the top of the stairs, his eyes unfocused. His clothes, the same clothes Thomas had been wearing the morning of his supposed accident, torn and stained with what I now realized wasn't blood but red clay from the cemetery. They buried me alive, he rasped, his voice like sandpaper on stone. Woke up in the dark, in a box, clawed my way out through loose soil they didn't pack right. Took me 3 days to dig free. The room erupted in chaos. Stephanie screamed. Victoria's face drained of all color, becoming as white as printer paper. Harrison and Marcus backed toward the door like cornered rats seeking an escape route. That's impossible, Victoria stammered. You were dead. The doctor confirmed, Dr. Foster confirmed. Dr. Foster took $50,000 cash to sedate me and declare me dead, Eddie said, descending one shaky step at a time. I heard you negotiating the price while I was paralyzed but conscious. Every word. Every disgusting word about your mother being next on the list. My legs gave out completely. I collapsed into Thomas's recliner, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might explode. The room spun violently, and I tasted copper in my mouth. Father Michael rushed to my side, checking my pulse with experienced fingers. Call 911, he commanded, but I grabbed his wrist. No, I whispered. Let him finish. I need to hear everything. Eddie reached the bottom of the stairs, and I could see him clearly now. This man who'd served 3 tours in Vietnam, who Thomas had been helping with odd jobs and hot meals for years. My daughters had chosen him because he had no family, no one to miss him, the perfect victim. Your husband saved my life more times than I can count, Eddie said, looking directly at me. Fixed my car for free, gave me work when nobody else would hire a drunk vet with PTSD. And these two, he pointed at Victoria and Stephanie with a shaking finger, they used his kindness to try to murder us both. You're lying, Stephanie said, but her voice cracked like thin ice. This is some kind of sick joke. Mother, don't listen to. They offered me $500 to help move furniture, Eddie continued. Said Mr. Sullivan hurt his back. I came over that Tuesday morning, and Victoria here made me coffee. Special coffee, she said, her own blend. Tasted funny, but I was being polite. 20 minutes later, I couldn't move, couldn't speak, could barely breathe. Mrs. Chen had her phone out, recording everything. Harrison lunged for it, but Father Michael stepped between them, all 6'3" of Irish Catholic authority. "Touch her and I'll show you what I learned in Belfast," Father Michael said quietly. Harrison backed off immediately. "They staged everything," Eddie continued, his words coming faster now, like water through a broken dam. "Put me in Mr. Sullivan's clothes, smashed my head with something, maybe a hammer enough to cause swelling but not enough to kill. Then they called 911, crying about a workshop accident. The EMTs never looked close. Why would they? Grieving daughters. Tragic accident." I was sobbing now, but not from sadness, from pure, white-hot rage. My daughters had buried a living man. They'd tried to bury him alive. "The drugs wore off underground," Eddie said, and his voice broke. "Do you know what that's like? Waking up in absolute darkness, in a coffin, 6 feet under?" I screamed until my throat bled. Broke every fingernail clawing at the wood. The fear was worse than anything in Nam. Victoria pulled out her phone. "I'm calling our lawyer. This man is clearly disturbed, breaking and entering, making false accusations." "False?" Eddie laughed bitterly. "I've got your DNA under my fingernails from when you and your sister dragged my dead body. I've got the coffin splinters embedded in my hands, and most importantly, he pulled out a small device from his pocket. I've got this, Mr. Sullivan gave it to me weeks ago, said to keep it on me always. It's been recording everything, uploading to the cloud. Thomas, my brilliant, suspicious Thomas, had known something was coming." "Even if that's true," Harrison said, trying to regain control, "it's the word of a homeless drunk against respected members of society. No jury would—" The front door burst open. Detective Morrison entered, followed by 6 uniformed officers. Behind them, impossibly, beautifully, was Thomas himself. I must have fainted because the next thing I knew, I was on the floor with Thomas cradling my head, his calloused hands gentle on my face. Those hands I'd held for 48 years, that I thought I'd never feel again. "Maggie, sweetheart, I'm here. I'm really here," he whispered, and I could smell his Old Spice aftershave, see the scar on his chin from when he fell off his bike at age 7. "Tom?" I touched his face, needing to confirm he was real. "They told me you were dead. I saw the body." That was Eddie, heavily sedated. "I'm so sorry, Maggie. I had to hide, had to let them think their plan worked so we could catch them." Detective Morrison said it was the only way to get enough evidence. Around us, the police were reading Miranda rights. Victoria and Stephanie stood in handcuffs, their perfect makeup streaking with tears finally, real tears, but only for themselves. "Mother, please!" Stephanie cried out. "We're your daughters, your flesh and blood. You can't let them do this." I stood up slowly, supported by Thomas, and faced the 2 strangers who'd emerged from my womb. "My daughters died years ago," I said clearly. "They died the moment they decided their mother's life was worth less than her bank account." "You don't understand," Victoria screamed. "All pretense gone. We have debts. Harvard wasn't free. Our lifestyles, our positions, they require money. You were just sitting on millions while we struggled." "Struggled?" "Mrs. Chen stepped forward. You drive a car that costs more than most people's houses. You vacation in the Hamptons. Your mother worked until her fingers bled so you could have those advantages, and you call that struggling?" "She owes us," Victoria spat. "We didn't ask to be born. She brought us into this world. She owes us everything she has." Father Michael crossed himself. "Mother of God," he whispered. The devil himself couldn't have said it better. As the police led them away, Stephanie turned back one last time. For a moment, just a fleeting second, I saw a flash of the little girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, who'd written me poems for Mother's Day, who'd said I was her best friend in the whole world. "Mommy," she whispered, and the word hit me like a physical blow. "I'm sorry." But it was too late for sorry. Sorry couldn't undo attempted murder. Sorry couldn't resurrect the love they'd killed, long before they'd tried to kill our bodies. As the police cars pulled away, Thomas held me while I sobbed deep, wrenching sobs that came from the darkest part of a mother's soul. I mourned not for the women being taken to jail, but for the little girls they'd once been, the daughters I'd thought I was raising, the family that had never really existed outside my desperate imagination. Eddie Montrose was taken to the hospital, but not before he squeezed my hand. Your husband's a good man, Mrs. Sullivan, and you're a good woman. Don't let what they did make you think otherwise." That night, in our bed, where Thomas should have been all along, I asked him the question that had been burning in my mind. "How long have you known what they were?" He was quiet for a long moment. "Since last Christmas," he finally said. "I overheard them on the phone, planning our deaths like they were planning a vacation. That's when I contacted Detective Morrison, started recording everything, preparing." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you'd have confronted them. Because you'd have tried to save them, to fix them, to love them back to humanity. And Maggie, my love, they'd have killed you for it." He was right. Even now, even after everything, a part of me, the mother part that never fully dies, wanted to believe this was all a mistake, a nightmare, something fixable with enough love and forgiveness. But some things can't be fixed. Some betrayals run too deep. Some children grow up to be monsters despite every sacrifice, every moment of love, every year of devotion poured into them. And sometimes the only way to survive your children is to let them go, even if it means watching them go to prison for trying to destroy you. The competency hearing was canceled. Instead, there would be a criminal trial. Victoria and Stephanie would face charges of attempted murder, conspiracy, fraud, and elder abuse. The prosecutors said they could get 25 to life. I should feel victorious. Instead, I feel empty, hollowed out like someone has scooped out my insides with a melon baller. But Thomas is alive. I'm alive. And that has to be enough. It has to be enough because it's all we have left. The days after my daughter's arrest blurred together like watercolors in rain. I couldn't eat. Every attempt ended with me retching over the toilet, my body rejecting nourishment as violently as my heart rejected what Victoria and Stephanie had become. Thomas force-fed me soup, spoonfuls of broth that tasted like liquid cardboard, while I stared at the kitchen wall where their height measurements were still penciled in from childhood. Stephanie, age 5, 41.5 inches. Such innocent marks. When had those little girls who barely reached my waist transformed into predators who towered over my bent frame? 3 days after the arrest, a package arrived. No return address, but the handwriting on the label made my blood freeze. It was Victoria's precise script, the same penmanship I'd praised when she won the 3rd grade handwriting contest. "Don't open it," Thomas warned, but I was already tearing through the brown paper with trembling fingers. Inside was a photo album I'd never seen before. The cover read, "The Real Story" in gold lettering. My stomach churned as I opened it. The first photo showed Victoria and Stephanie at Harvard and Wharton, respectively. Normal enough. But there were sticky notes attached. Year 1. Started planning. The next photo showed them at a law office. The note, "Drew up fake insurance papers. Mom too, trusting to read fine print." Page after page documented their conspiracy. Photos of them meeting with Dr. Foster, agreed to false diagnosis for $50,000. Pictures of Harrison and Marcus examining blueprints of our house, entry points marked. A screenshot of a text conversation between the sisters. "How much sedative before it's lethal? Start small. Build tolerance." Then overdose looks accidental. I made it to the bathroom just in time, collapsing on the cold tile as my body expelled what little was in my stomach. The calculating nature of it, the patience, the careful documentation of their own evil, it was like discovering your children were serial killers who'd kept trophies. "Why would she send this?" I gasped between heaves. Thomas, reading through the album with detective's eyes, found the answer on the last page, a letter in Stephanie's shaky handwriting. "Mother, by the time you read this, we'll have made bail. Harrison's family has money you never knew about, old Boston money, Mayflower money. We're leaving the country. Switzerland doesn't extradite for conspiracy charges. This album is our confession and our goodbye. You wanted to know how we could do this? Look at every birthday party you threw where kids laughed at our handmade decorations. Look at every parent-teacher conference where you showed up in your scrubs, exhausted and smelling like disinfectant, while other mothers wore designer suits. Look at every Christmas where we unwrapped Target gifts while watching our classmates post about their trips to Aspen on Instagram. You gave us enough to see what we were missing, but not enough to have it. That's worse than having nothing at all. We're not sorry for trying to take what should have been ours. We're only sorry we failed. Don't look for us. To you, we're dead. Consider the funeral you just attended as ours too. Your former daughters. The letter fell from my numb fingers. Thomas caught me as I collapsed, my body convulsing with sobs so violent I thought my ribs might shatter. "They're gone," I wailed into his chest. "They made bail and ran. They documented everything like they were proud of it." Detective Morrison arrived within an hour of Thomas's call. His face was grim as he examined the album. "This is evidence of premeditation going back 6 years," he said. "But you're right, they made bail yesterday, $2 million each, paid in cash by Harrison's family. They had passports ready, probably fake ones. By now they're likely in international airspace." "So they get away with it?" My voice cracked. "They try to murder us and they just leave?" "We'll issue international warrants," Morrison said, but his tone suggested he knew how futile that was. "The album is actually helpful, it's a full confession. If they ever set foot on U.S. soil again, they'll be arrested immediately." That night, I couldn't stop staring at one particular photo in the album, the twins' 8th birthday party. I'd saved for months to rent the church hall, bake the cake myself, 3 layers, chocolate with vanilla frosting, decorated with hand-piped roses that took me 6 hours to perfect. In the photo, the girls are blowing out candles, but there's a note attached in Victoria's adult handwriting, "The moment we realized we were poor." Ashley Blackwell's party had a petting zoo and catered sushi. We had homemade cake in a church basement. They'd been ashamed of me since they were 8 years old. The next morning, Thomas found me in the twins' old room, holding their baby shoes, tiny pink leather things, so small they fit in my palm. I was rocking back and forth, keening like a wounded animal. 45 years, I whispered. I carried them despite the preeclampsia that nearly killed me. 36 hours of labor. Emergency C-section. I died on that table for 3 minutes, and they brought me back, and the first thing I asked was, "Are my babies okay?" Thomas held me as I shook. "You were a wonderful mother, Maggie. This isn't your fault." "Then whose fault is it?" I screamed. "I made them. I raised them. If they're monsters, what does that make me?" The doorbell interrupted my breakdown. Mrs. Chen stood there with Father Michael and, surprisingly, a woman I didn't recognize, elderly, well-dressed, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Margaret," Father Michael said gently, "this is Mrs. Eleanor Whitman. She's the woman whose estate Victoria and Stephanie were planning to steal next." My blood turned to ice. "What?" Mrs. Whitman stepped forward, taking my hands in her soft, wrinkled ones. "Your daughters approached me 3 months ago. They were so charming, so concerned about my welfare. They knew I was worth $12 million and had no children. They offered to help manage my finances, get me proper care." She pulled out her phone, showing me emails from Victoria discussing expediting the inheritance process for poor, confused Mrs. Whitman. "I'm 84, Mrs. Whitman continued, "but I'm sharp as a tack. I knew immediately what they were after. I hired a private investigator, which led me to discover what they were doing to you. I tried to warn you, but the text messages," I gasped. "At the funeral." "That was you?" She shook her head. "No, dear. But I know who did send them. There's someone else here who needs to talk to you." Another car pulled up. A young woman emerged, early 20s, with Victoria's exact bone structure but softer eyes. My heart stopped. "Hello, grandmother," she said quietly. "I'm Nicole. Victoria's daughter. The one she never told you about." The world tilted. I grabbed the doorframe to keep from falling. "Victoria has a child?" Nicole nodded, tears streaming down her face. "She had me at 17, during her senior year of high school. Paid a family in Connecticut to raise me. Told everyone I was studying abroad that year. She sent money, but never visited, never called. I found out about you by accident when I was 18. Why didn't she? I couldn't form complete sentences. She said you'd be disappointed in her for getting pregnant, said it would ruin her Harvard prospects. But really, I think she just saw me as an inconvenience, a mistake that would slow down her plans." Nicole pulled out her phone. "I sent those messages at the funeral. I've been watching, trying to protect you. I knew what she was planning. She drunk-dialed me once, bragging about how she'd be rich once you and grandfather were gone. I stared at this young woman, my granddaughter, seeing traces of the Victoria I'd once loved in her features, but also something else, genuine compassion, real humanity. "I have something else to tell you," Nicole said, her voice breaking. "I'm not the only one. Stephanie has a son. He's 15. Lives with his father in California. She pays them to stay away too. 2 grandchildren. 2 human beings my daughters had hidden from me, denied me, paid to keep secret. The betrayal wasn't just about money. They'd stolen an entire generation from me, grandchildren I could have loved, who could have loved me back. I collapsed then, really collapsed, my 72-year-old body finally giving out under the weight of revelation after revelation. Thomas and Father Michael carried me inside while Mrs. Chen called 911. As the ambulance arrived, I heard Nicole talking to Detective Morrison. I have recordings, years of recordings. My mother calling me, drunk, explaining exactly how she was going to kill her parents and make it look natural. I'll testify, I'll provide everything. The last thing I saw before the sedatives took effect was Nicole's face hovering over mine, her hand holding mine, tears dropping onto our intertwined fingers. "I'm so sorry, grandmother," she whispered. "I should have come sooner. I should have been braver. But I'm here now. I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." In that moment, despite everything, I felt something I thought had died forever. The flicker of maternal love, transferred now to this granddaughter I'd just met. This young woman who'd risked everything to save me from the monsters I'd given birth to. Perhaps this was how it was meant to be. Perhaps Victoria and Stephanie had to die as my daughters so Nicole could live as my granddaughter. Perhaps some love skips a generation, waiting for worthy recipients. As darkness closed in, I squeezed Nicole's hand and whispered, "Tell me about yourself. Tell me everything I missed." And in the ambulance, racing through Boston streets, she did. I woke in Massachusetts General Hospital, the same cardiac unit where I'd worked for 35 years, now lying in the bed instead of standing beside it. The irony wasn't lost on me. Nicole was asleep in the chair beside my bed, her hand still holding mine, her face bearing tear tracks that had dried into salty rivers on her cheeks. "She hasn't left your side in 3 days, Thomas whispered from the doorway. "That girl has more loyalty in her little finger than Victoria had in her entire body." 3 days. I'd lost 3 days to exhaustion, dehydration, and what my former colleague Dr. Patricia Kumar called trauma-induced cardiac stress. "Your heart literally broke, Maggie," Patricia explained, reviewing my charts. "Takotsubo cardiomyopathy. We see it in cases of extreme emotional trauma. Your heart temporarily changed shape from the stress. A broken heart. The medical term for what mothers feel when their children become monsters." Nicole stirred, her eyes fluttering open. When she saw I was awake, fresh tears spilled. "Grandmother, I'm so sorry. There's more you need to know. About the money." My stomach clenched. "What money?" She pulled out a laptop, fingers flying across the keys. "I'm a forensic accountant, ironic, right? Victoria's daughter, following in her financial footsteps but using it for good. I've been tracking Mom and Stephanie's dealings for years." The screen showed bank accounts I'd never seen before. Offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, Switzerland, Singapore. The numbers made me dizzy, not thousands. Not hundreds of thousands, but millions. "You've made it this far, go ahead and hit. Like to let me know you're still with me. You know, every share you make might help someone out there find a little hope. And before we continue, don't forget to subscribe because who knows, the next story might just touch your heart." "They've been stealing from you since they were 18, Nicole explained, her voice steady despite her obvious pain. "Every birthday check you wrote, they'd deposit, then write themselves a second one for 10 times the amount. Every time you gave them your credit card for emergencies, they'd make cash advances. That retirement fund you cashed out for their education, they only used half. The rest went into these accounts. But that would be over $800,000, I whispered. "Try 3.4 million, Nicole corrected. "With interest and investments over 27 years. They've been playing the long game, grandmother. Your death was supposed to be the final score, but they've been stealing all along." I couldn't breathe. The machine beside my bed started beeping frantically. Patricia rushed in, adjusting medications, checking vitals, but I waved her off. "I need to hear this," I gasped. "All of it." Nicole continued, relentless in her revelation. "There's more. Grandpa's business, Sullivan Plumbing. They sold it 6 months ago." "What?" Thomas stepped forward. "That's impossible. I never signed anything. They forged your signatures, both of you. Sold it to Harrison's shell company for $50,000, then he flipped it to a developer for $4.2 million. The land alone was worth more than that prime real estate near the new biotech corridor. Thomas sank into a chair, his face gray. 4.2 million? I built that business with my bare hands. 40 years of work, and they just stole it? The paperwork was filed while you were supposedly dead, Grandpa. Who was going to question a grieving daughter handling her father's estate? Detective Morrison appeared in the doorway, having heard everything. This changes things. Interstate fraud, forgery, grand larceny, these are federal crimes. Even in Switzerland, they won't be safe from federal charges. There's still more, Nicole said quietly. She pulled up another screen. Grandmother, did you know about the trust? What trust? Your parents' trust. Your maiden name was O'Brien, right? Your father was Patrick O'Brien? I nodded, confused. He died when I was 10. We were poor Irish immigrants. There was no money. Nicole's fingers danced across the keyboard. Your father owned 3 buildings in Southie, bought them for nothing in the 1940s, held on to them. When he died, they went into a trust for you. Your mother never told you she remarried, and your stepfather convinced her you didn't need to know. The buildings were sold in 2018 for $18 million. The room spun. 18 million? Victoria found out during her time at the law firm. She's been managing the trust as your representative for 5 years, siphoning money. There should be 21 million with interest. There's only 6 million left. I vomited into the basin Patricia held, my body rejecting this information as violently as it rejected food. My daughters hadn't just tried to kill me for money, they'd already stolen a fortune I never knew existed. They stole my poverty, I said, the words sounding insane even to me. All those years of struggle, working doubles, Thomas destroying his body with manual labor, we had millions sitting in a trust. They wanted you dependent, Nicole explained. If you'd known about the trust, you'd have had power. This way, they could play the successful daughters, letting you struggle while they built their empire on your hidden wealth. Stephanie's son, my 15-year-old grandson I'd just learned existed, chose that moment to walk in. Tall, lanky, with Thomas's jaw and my green eyes. He looked terrified. Hi, he said awkwardly. I'm David. Mom Stephanie, she told me you were dead. Said you died when I was born. I only found out you were alive when Nicole contacted me last week. Another grandson. Another piece of my heart I never knew was missing. She told you I was dead? I reached for him, and he cautiously took my hand. Said you died of disappointment when she had me out of wedlock. Said that's why she couldn't keep me, because the grief was too much. His voice cracked. I spent 15 years thinking I killed my grandmother. The cruelty of it, the calculated, deliberate cruelty, was breathtaking. They'd told this child he was responsible for my death while stealing my money and planning my actual murder. Oh, sweetheart, I pulled him close, this gangly teenager who smelled like awkwardness and Axe body spray. You didn't kill me. You're the first good thing to come from Stephanie in decades. Mrs. Eleanor Whitman entered then, followed by someone I didn't expect, Harrison's mother, Mrs. Patricia Blackwell, matriarch of one of Boston's oldest families. Margaret, Mrs. Blackwell said, her Brahmin accent sharp as winter. I've come to apologize, and to make things right. Your son, I started. Is a disgrace to our family name, she interrupted. 400 years of Blackwell history, and he uses it to attempt murder? I've cut him off. Completely. The 2 million bail? That was his entire inheritance, and he'll never see another penny from the family trust. She pulled out a check. This is for you. $10 million. It doesn't undo what Harrison participated in, but it's a start. I stared at the check. I can't. You can and you will, Mrs. Blackwell insisted. Consider it compensation for what you've endured. And Margaret? I've spoken to my contacts in Switzerland. Banking contacts. Victoria and Stephanie's accounts have been frozen pending investigation. They're trapped there with whatever cash they carried. No access to the stolen millions. They're broke? Thomas asked. Completely. Living in a youth hostel last I heard, trying to find under-the-table work. Switzerland is expensive when you're not a millionaire. I should have felt satisfied, but I just felt empty. My daughters, who'd killed for money, were now penniless in a foreign country. The poetry of it was lost on me. Nicole pulled up one final document on her laptop. Grandmother, there's one more thing. I found this in Mom's email drafts. She never sent it. It was a letter dated 3 years ago. Mom, I almost called you today. David, you have a grandson named David, asked about his grandmother, and I almost told him the truth, that you're alive, that you're kind, that you'd love him instantly and completely. But then I remembered the house, the cars, the money, the plan. I chose money over you, Mom. I chose it over my son. I chose it over my soul. I'm already dead inside. Soon you'll be dead outside, and maybe that will make us even. Victoria. She'd known. She'd known what she was choosing, what she was becoming. She'd stood at the crossroads between love and money, and she'd chosen money with full awareness of the cost. That's when I finally broke completely. Not dramatic sobs or wailing, but a quiet, complete shattering. I'd raised sociopaths, knowing, conscious sociopaths who'd chosen evil. Nicole held me while I fell apart, this granddaughter I'd just met providing the comfort my daughters never had. David stood awkwardly beside us, then suddenly hugged me too, this teenager who'd thought he'd killed me now trying to hold me together. We're your family now, Nicole whispered. David and I, we're going to be the family you deserved, if you'll let us. I looked at these two young people, my grandchildren, my blood, but uncorrupted by their mother's poison. Maybe this was redemption. Maybe this was how the story was supposed to end. There's going to be a trial, Detective Morrison said gently, even in absentia. Will you testify? I thought of Victoria and Stephanie, huddled in some Swiss hostel, their stolen millions frozen, their carefully laid plans in ruins. Then I looked at Nicole and David, at Thomas, at the family I still had. Yes, I said firmly. I'll testify. They need to be exposed for what they are, even if they never serve time. The machine monitoring my broken heart beeped steadily, each sound a reminder that I'd survived. We'd survived. And sometimes, survival is its own form of justice. 2 weeks after my discharge from the hospital, I found myself standing in Thomas's workshop, the place where my daughters had staged their murderous deception. The police tape was gone, but the ghosts remained. Every tool, every workbench, every jar of screws held memories of Thomas teaching the girls to use a hammer, to measure twice and cut once, to build rather than destroy. Nicole stood beside me, her hand on my shoulder. We don't have to do this, grandmother. Yes, we do, I said, running my fingers along Thomas's primary workbench. There's something here. Something they missed. David was examining the ladder, the supposedly deadly ladder. This doesn't make sense, he muttered. The police report says Grandpa fell from the top rung, but look, he pointed to the safety mechanisms. These locks engage automatically at every level. You'd have to deliberately disengage them to fall. Your grandfather was many things, Thomas said from the doorway, but careless wasn't one of them. I installed those locks myself after Maggie's knee surgery. No way I'd climb without engaging them. I moved to the corner where Thomas kept his most precious items, tools that had belonged to his father, photographs of family job sites spanning 60 years. Behind a 1976 photo of him installing pipes at Fenway Park, something caught my eye. An envelope, yellowed with age, with "For Maggie," open only in emergency written across it. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a letter dated just 1 month ago. My dearest Maggie, if you're reading this, then they've done something to me. I'm writing this after overhearing Victoria on the phone discussing the timeline. She doesn't know I heard her say, Mom goes next, within 6 months. I've hidden something they'll never find because they never paid attention when I tried to teach them. Under the floorboard beneath my father's tool chest, the one they always said was too heavy and old, you'll find everything. I love you, Maggie. 48 years wasn't enough. Forever yours, Tom. David and Nicole helped me move the ancient tool chest, a monster that weighed 300 pounds. Beneath it, a floorboard was slightly raised. David pried it up, revealing a hidden compartment containing 3 USB drives, a manila folder, and a small recorder. Oh my God, Nicole breathed as she plugged the first USB into her laptop. This is... Grandpa, you recorded everything. Hours of video filled the screen. Thomas had hidden cameras throughout the workshop, motion activated, uploading to cloud storage. The first video was dated 6 months ago, Victoria and Stephanie entering the workshop while Thomas was at a doctor's appointment. This is perfect, Victoria said on screen, testing the ladder. Old fool climbs this every day to reach the upper shelves. All we need is to weaken the right rung, make it look like wood rot. What about Mom? Stephanie asked, examining bottles of chemicals on the shelf. Antifreeze in her tea, small doses over months. She's already showing signs from the benzos. By the time she dies, everyone will think it's dementia-related organ failure. I ran to the bathroom and vomited until my stomach was empty, then continued retching nothing but bile and horror. My daughters had been poisoning me with antifreeze. The mysterious weakness, the confusion, the episodes I'd attributed to age, all deliberate, systematic attempted murder. "There's more," David said grimly, clicking through files. "Financial records. Grandpa tracked every deposit, every withdrawal. He knew about the trust fund. He hired a forensic accountant. Look, here are the reports." The papers showed Thomas had discovered everything 3 months ago. The stolen millions, the forged signatures, the secret grandchildren, even the plan to murder us both. He'd compiled enough evidence to destroy them, but he'd waited. Why? Another video answered that question. Thomas, alone in the workshop, talking to the camera. "I could stop them now, but they'd get maybe 5 years for fraud. I need them to actually attempt murder for real justice. Maggie, honey, if you're watching this, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I let it get this far, but I needed ironclad evidence. They're not our daughters anymore. They're predators, and predators need to be caged." "He used himself as bait," Thomas said quietly, tears streaming down his weathered face. "I knew they'd try something soon." The recorder Eddie carried, the cameras, getting Detective Morrison involved, I orchestrated all of it. I just didn't expect them to use Eddie as my body double. The final USB contained something that shattered what remained of my maternal delusions. Audio recordings of Victoria and Stephanie from when they were teenagers, discussing their plans. "Mom's so stupid," 15-year-old Victoria said. "She actually thinks we love her." "The guilt trips are getting annoying," teenage Stephanie replied. "All that I sacrificed everything for you garbage, like we asked to be born into poverty. When we're successful, we'll put them in the cheapest home possible. Visit once a year maybe." Why even visit? Inheritance. Got to stay in the will. They'd been planning our disposal since high school. Every hug, every I love you, every Mother's Day card had been a performance, a long con that started before they could even vote. Mrs. Chen appeared in the workshop doorway, her face grave. "Margaret, there's someone here you need to see." Behind her stood a man I didn't recognize, mid-40s, expensive suit, but with kind eyes. "Mrs. Sullivan, I'm James Whitaker, Stephanie's husband." I nearly collapsed. "Stephanie's married?" "For 10 years. She kept me secret, said you were abusive, that she'd cut contact for her mental health. I believed her until last month when I found the album, the confession album she sent you. She left a copy in our safe. I have twin daughters, Mrs. Sullivan, your granddaughters. 7-year-old twins named Emma and Olivia. More grandchildren." The number kept growing, like a horrible miracle. "Where are they?" I whispered. "In the car with my mother." I wanted to make sure you'd want to meet them first. After everything Stephanie did, bring them in, I said firmly. Whatever their mother's sins, those babies are innocent. 2 identical girls with Stephanie's bone structure, but James's gentle eyes entered shyly, holding hands. They looked exactly like Victoria and Stephanie at that age, and my heart shattered and reformed simultaneously. "Are you really our grandmother?" Emma asked. "Mommy said you went to heaven." "Mommy lied," Olivia said bluntly. "She lies about everything. That's why Daddy made her leave." "You kicked Stephanie out?" I asked James. "The day I found the album. Filed for divorce and sole custody. She didn't even fight it, just took her half of our assets and ran. I think she'd been planning to leave anyway. There were tickets to Switzerland dated for next month, one way, just for her." The twins approached me cautiously. Olivia reached out and touched my face. "You look nice. Not mean like Mommy said." "Mommy said you were a witch," Emma added. "But witches don't cry, and you're crying." I pulled them into my arms, these 2 little girls who smelled like juice boxes and innocence. "I'm crying because I'm happy to meet you." "Grandma," Olivia said, the word hitting me like lightning, "Mommy took our piggy banks. She said we owed her for being born. Is that true? Do kids owe their parents for being born?" The perfect echo of their mother's philosophy, spoken from such innocent lips. "No, sweetheart. Parents owe their children love, and children don't owe anything back." Nicole's laptop chimed. A news alert from Reuters. 2 American women found dead in Swiss hostel. Apparent murder, suicide. The room went silent. I grabbed the laptop, reading with trembling hands. Victoria Sullivan Blackwell, 45, and Stephanie Sullivan, 45, were found dead in a Zurich hostel room. Police report Victoria shot her sister before turning the gun on herself. A note indicated financial desperation after Swiss banks froze their assets. The twins were wanted in the United States for attempted murder and fraud. They were gone. My daughters, my monsters, were dead by their own hands, their greed ultimately consuming them in the most literal way possible. I felt nothing. Then everything. Then nothing again. Thomas held me as I stood frozen, unable to process that the children I'd carried for 9 months, nursed through fevers, taught to read, were gone forever by their own violence, as they'd lived. "Mommy's not coming back?" Emma asked in a small voice. James knelt beside his daughters. "No, sweethearts. Mommy made some very bad choices, and she's not coming back." "Good," Olivia said with shocking vehemence. "She was mean. Grandma seems nicer." From the mouths of babes, the harshest truths. That night, our house was full for the first time in years. Nicole, David, James, Emma, and Olivia joined Thomas and me for dinner, a chaotic, loud, messy meal with spilled milk and overlapping conversations and genuine laughter. The family I'd always dreamed of, built from the ashes of the one that had tried to destroy me. To survival, Thomas toasted with his coffee mug. To family, Nicole countered, the real kind, the chosen kind. To Grandma, little Emma said, raising her juice box, for not being dead like Mommy said. We clinked our mismatched cups together, this strange, broken, beautiful family forged from betrayal and reborn through truth. Outside, Boston's winter wind howled, but inside, for the first time in decades, I felt warm. My daughters were dead, but I was alive. My grandchildren were here, untainted by their mother's poison. The money both stolen and recovered would go to them, to their futures, to breaking the cycle of greed that had destroyed Victoria and Stephanie. The morning of Victoria and Stephanie's memorial service, if you could call it that, arrived gray and bitter, with freezing rain that turned Boston's streets into sheets of black ice. I stood in our bedroom, holding a black dress I'd worn to too many funerals, when Thomas handed me an envelope I'd never seen before. "I found this in Victoria's safety deposit box," he said quietly. "The bank called. She'd listed you as the beneficiary. There was just this letter and something else." My hands shook as I opened the envelope. Victoria's precise handwriting filled 3 pages, dated just 1 week before their deaths. "Mother, by the time you read this, Stephanie and I will be gone. Not because we were caught, but because we finally caught ourselves. The money in Switzerland? It's gone. We spent it all trying to maintain the lifestyle we thought we deserved. Penthouses, designer clothes, first-class everything. When it ran out and the banks froze our stolen funds, we faced the same poverty we'd spent our lives running from. The irony isn't lost on me. I'm writing this sober for the first time in 5 years. Do you know when I started drinking, Mother? The day Emma was born. The day I looked into my daughter's eyes and felt nothing. The same nothing I felt when I looked at you. That's when I knew I was broken beyond repair. Stephanie's worse than me, if you can believe it. She tried to sell David to human traffickers when he was 2. James doesn't know. Nobody knows except me. And now you. I stopped her, not from love, but from practicality. Kidnapping charges would have ruined our plans. We were never your daughters, Mother. We were parasites that happened to share your DNA. You'll blame yourself because that's what mothers do. But listen to me. You could have given us the world on a silver platter, and we would have melted it down for cash and complained about the spot price of silver. The thing in the safety deposit box? It's the only honest thing I ever gave you. Victoria. I set the letter down and pulled out the second item from the envelope, a small velvet box. Inside was a child's ring, tiny and tarnished. I recognized it immediately, the ring I'd given Victoria for her 6th birthday, bought with money I'd saved by skipping lunches for 3 months. She'd worn it every day until middle school when she'd told me she lost it. She'd kept it. For 39 years, through every move, every life change, she'd kept this worthless piece of costume jewelry that had cost me $12 at Woolworth's. She loved you once, Thomas said gently. Maybe that makes it worse. It did. It made it infinitely worse. Because it meant Victoria had chosen to become a monster. She'd felt love and decided it was worth less than money. The doorbell rang. Detective Morrison stood in the rain, his face grim. "Mrs. Sullivan, I need to show you something we found in Stephanie's apartment in Zurich." He handed me an iPad showing a video security footage from a Swiss bank dated 3 days before their deaths. Victoria and Stephanie sat across from a banker, and the audio was clear. "I'm sorry," the banker said in accented English, "but the freeze on your accounts is permanent. The United States government has proven the funds were obtained illegally." "Then we'll take what we can get," Stephanie said. "The insurance policies on our parents, surely those will pay out when they're dead." "Madame, your parents are very much alive. There are no insurance payouts." "Not for long," Victoria said coldly. "We'll go back, finish what we started, make it look like a murder-suicide. Old couple, financial stress, broken hearts over their criminal daughters. People will believe it." The banker's face went pale. "I'm required to report threats of violence." "You're required to mind your own business," Stephanie snapped. "We're leaving. Book us flights to Boston. Tonight." The video ended. They'd been planning to come back, to finish killing us, when they'd turned on each other instead. "There's more," Morrison said reluctantly. "We found Stephanie's journal. The final entry. You should read it. I can't kill her. Victoria, I mean. She's standing in the bathroom, brushing her teeth like we're not planning to murder our parents tomorrow, like we didn't already try once. Like we're not monsters. But I have to kill her. She knows I've been skimming from our Swiss accounts. She knows I killed that homeless woman in Geneva who recognized us from the Interpol alerts. She knows too much. And I know she's planning to kill me too. I saw the poison in her purse. Probably for my coffee tomorrow morning. It's funny we learned from the best. From ourselves. Mom, if you ever read this, I felt it once. Love. When David was born. For exactly 3 seconds, I understood what you felt for us. Then it was gone, like a candle snuffed out, and all I felt was trapped. I gave him away the next day. Those 3 seconds of love were the worst 3 seconds of my life. Because they showed me what I could have been if I wasn't what I am. A monster who came from an angel's womb. I ran to the bathroom and vomited until I was empty, then sat on the cold tile floor, sobbing so hard I couldn't breathe. Thomas found me there an hour later, still clutching the journal pages. "We're not going to the memorial," he said firmly. "I don't care what anyone thinks." "No," I said, standing on shaking legs. "We're going. With all the grandchildren, we're going to show the world what Victoria and Stephanie threw away for money." St. Catherine's Church was nearly empty. Father Michael presided over 2 closed caskets, empty caskets, as the bodies were still in Switzerland pending investigation. Mrs. Chen sat in the front row with us. Nicole held my right hand, David my left. James sat behind us with Emma and Olivia, who didn't understand why we were there but knew to be quiet. Harrison and Marcus were notably absent, both in custody, charged as co-conspirators. Mrs. Patricia Blackwell sat alone in the back, her presence a silent acknowledgement of her son's crimes. "We gather today," Father Michael began, "to mourn not the women who died, but the children they once were. The innocent babies who were corrupted by greed, who chose money over blood, who murdered their own souls long before they tried to murder their parents." Halfway through his sermon, the church doors burst open. A woman stumbled in, elderly, frail, wearing clothes decades out of date. She looked familiar, but I couldn't place her until she spoke. "Margaret? Margaret O'Brien?" My maiden name. No one had called me that in 48 years. "Aunt Colleen?" I gasped. "My mother's sister, who disappeared when I was 12, right after my father died." "I've been looking for you for 60 years, she cried, rushing toward me. "Your stepfather told me you died, told everyone you died. But I knew he was lying." "What?" She pulled out a yellow document. "Your father's will, the real one, not the forgery your stepfather filed. Patrick left everything to you, Margaret. The buildings, the money, all of it. But your stepfather convinced your mother you were too young, that it should be held in trust. Then he told everyone you died in a fire, collected the insurance, and took everything." The room spun. My entire life, the poverty, the struggle, the desperate scramble for every dollar had been built on a lie. Just like my daughters' lives had been built on lies. "There's more," Colleen continued. "Your mother didn't die of cancer like he told you. He poisoned her. Antifreeze in her tea, Small doses over time. Just like Victoria and Stephanie were doing to me, I finished, the horrible parallel slamming home. The pattern went back generations. Greed, murder, betrayal, a poisonous inheritance passed down like a cursed heirloom. But it had stopped with me. I'd broken the cycle by surviving, by refusing to be murdered for money. How much? Thomas asked Colleen. How much did he steal? In today's money? About $50 million. It would have been yours, Margaret. All of it. I laughed, actually laughed in the middle of my daughter's memorial service. The absurdity of it all. Victoria and Stephanie had killed for money that was already mine, stolen by another murderer 2 generations back. Let the dead bury the dead, I said, quoting scripture Father Michael had just read. The money doesn't matter. It never mattered. I stood, pulling my grandchildren up with me. We're leaving. This isn't a memorial, it's a celebration. Victoria and Stephanie are gone, but we're alive. We survived them, just like I survived my stepfather without even knowing it. We're the winners here. As we walked out of the church, Emma tugged on my hand. Grandma, were those ladies in the boxes bad people? Yes, sweetheart. They were very bad people who happened to be my daughters. But you're good, Olivia said firmly. So maybe we got the good from you and skipped them? Maybe you did, I agreed, squeezing their little hands. Outside, the freezing rain had stopped, and weak sunlight broke through the clouds. It felt like a sign, a promise that the storm had finally passed. My daughters were dead, but I had 5 grandchildren who were very much alive. The cycle of greed and murder had been broken. And for the first time in my 72 years, I was truly, completely free. The week after the empty memorial service, I was sorting through boxes in the attic trying to decide what to keep and what to burn when I found something that stopped my heart cold. A DVD labeled Christmas 2010 in Stephanie's handwriting. My hands trembled as I inserted it into the old player we kept in the bedroom. The video opened on our living room, decorated with the artificial tree Thomas had bought at a yard sale, ornaments I'd collected over 40 years. There was 8-year-old Emma and Olivia. Wait, that couldn't be right. The timeline was wrong. But no, the video continued, and I heard Stephanie's voice behind the camera. Mom thinks we're at a medical conference in Chicago. She has no idea her granddaughters live 20 minutes away. The camera panned to Victoria bouncing a toddler on her knee. Nicole, it had to be Nicole, while another woman I didn't recognize held an infant. This is David, the stranger said, and my legs gave out. I collapsed onto the bed as the truth hit me. They'd all been here, in Boston, the whole time. My grandchildren had grown up minutes from my house while I believed they didn't exist. Thomas found me 3 hours later, still staring at the frozen screen, the DVD having played through dozens of hidden family gatherings, birthdays, Christmases all celebrated in rental halls and hotels while we sat alone in our empty house, wondering why our daughters never visited. They stole 15 years, I whispered. 15 years of being a grandmother. Emma and Olivia lived in Brookline. Nicole was in Cambridge, David in Newton. They were all here, Thomas. All of them, just miles away. The rage that filled me was unlike anything I'd ever experienced, not hot but arctic, crystallizing every cell in my body into pure, focused fury. I grabbed my phone and called Detective Morrison. I want to visit their bodies, I said. In Switzerland. Before they're cremated. Mrs. Sullivan, I don't think. I need to see them. I need to know they're really dead. Because if they're not, if this is another con, another trick, they're dead, he said gently. I've seen the autopsy reports myself, but if you need to go, I understand. 3 days later, Thomas and I stood in a Zurich morgue, looking at the bodies of our daughters. They looked smaller in death, deflated somehow, as if their greed and hatred had been the only things giving them substance. Victoria's face was frozen. In an expression of surprise, she hadn't expected Stephanie to shoot first. Stephanie's was oddly peaceful, as if death had been a relief. 37 hours, the medical examiner said in accented English. That's how long Stephanie survived after shooting her sister. She bled out slowly from her self-inflicted wound. She had time to call for help, to save herself, but she didn't. Why? Thomas asked. The examiner handed us a blood-stained paper, Stephanie's final words, scrawled in dying handwriting. Won. I won. Got her first. She thought she was smarter, but I won. Mom, if you find this, I won. Tell Nicole her mother lost. Tell David I beat Victoria. I finally beat her at something. Even dying, bleeding out alone in a foreign country, Stephanie's last thought was of winning, of beating her sister. Not remorse, not love, not fear, just sick, twisted triumph. That night in our Zurich hotel, I couldn't sleep. At 3 a.m., my phone rang an unknown Swiss number. Is this Margaret Sullivan? The voice was heavily accented, elderly. Yes. I am Frau Gertrude Muller. I own the hostel where your daughters, where it happened. I am calling because I found something in the walls. They had made a hole, hidden something. The police? They did not find it. We met her at dawn in a small cafe near the train station. She was ancient, probably 90, with sharp blue eyes that missed nothing. She pushed a package across the table wrapped in plastic, sealed with duct tape. Inside were 2 leather journals and a USB drive. Victoria's journal, the first entry dated just days before their death. Day 1 in hell, also known as Switzerland. The money's gone, all of it. $3.4 million spent in 6 months on nothing. Clothes that don't make me happy, cars I crashed while drunk, penthouses I can't remember buying. Stephanie blames me. I blame her. We blame each other for everything except the truth. We're addicts. Not to drugs or alcohol, though there's plenty of that. We're addicted to spending, to consuming, to destroying everything we touch, including ourselves. Stephanie's journal was darker. I've been poisoning Victoria for 3 weeks. Small doses of the same antifreeze we gave Mom. She doesn't know. Thinks it's altitude sickness. Once she's dead, I'll take her passport, her identity. Victoria was always the prettier one, the smarter one. Now I'll be her. I'll go back to Boston, convince Mom and Dad I'm Victoria, that Stephanie died. I'll say I've changed, found God, want forgiveness. They're old, desperate for love. They'll believe me. Then I'll finish what we started, but keep all the money for myself. The USB contained videos, hours of them arguing, fighting physically, pulling knives on each other, then crying and embracing, then fighting again. They were destroying each other long before the final bullets. There's something else, Frau Mueller said quietly. They had visitors the night before they died. 2 men, Americans. My blood froze. Harrison and Marcus? She shook her head. No, older, well-dressed. They gave your daughters an ultimatum I heard through the walls. Return to America and confess everything, or die in Switzerland. Who were they? She pulled out a grainy security photo. I recognized one of them immediately. Richard Blackwell, Harrison's father, patriarch of the Blackwell family. The other was Anthony Chen, Marcus's father, a federal judge. They came to clean up the mess, Thomas said grimly. Their sons were going down for conspiracy, so they made sure the main witnesses would never testify. You mean, your daughters didn't kill each other, Maggie. They were executed, made to look like murder-suicide. I should have felt something: anger, relief, vindication. Instead, I felt nothing but hollow exhaustion. My daughters had been murdered by the fathers of the men they'd conspired with, a fitting end to their poisonous lives. Back in Boston, I confronted Mrs. Patricia Blackwell at her Beacon Hill mansion. You knew, I said. You knew what your husband did. She didn't deny it. Richard protects the family name at all costs. Your daughters threatened that name. They had to be eliminated. They were my children. They were monsters, she said coldly. You know this. They tried to murder you. They would have succeeded eventually. Richard did you a favor. A favor? He murdered my daughters. No, he put down rabid dogs who happened to share your DNA. There's a difference. She pulled out a check, $50 million. This is what your father's buildings were really worth. What your stepfather stole. Take it and walk away, Margaret. Your daughters are dead. Your grandchildren are safe. Justice, in its own twisted way, has been served. I tore the check in half, then quarters, then eighths, letting the pieces flutter to her pristine floor. Blood money. That's all it's ever been. Blood money. My father's blood, my mother's blood, my daughter's blood. I don't want it. Then what do you want? I want my family. The real one. Nicole, David, Emma, Olivia, and a 5th grandchild I just learned about. Did you know Victoria had another child? A son named Michael, living with adoptive parents in Maine. 15 years old, brilliant, kind, nothing like his mother. That's 5 grandchildren who need love, not money. I turned to leave, then stopped. Tell your husband and Judge Chen that I know what they did. I have the evidence, Frau Mueller's testimony, the security footage, the journals describing their visit. If anything happens to me, to Thomas, to any of my grandchildren, it all goes public. The Blackwell name, the Chen reputation destroyed. Patricia's face went white. You're blackmailing us? No, I'm protecting my family, the way a mother should, the way I failed to protect them from Victoria and Stephanie, but never again. That night, I gathered my 5 grandchildren in our living room, the same room where their mothers had planned our murders. Nicole had driven up from New York where she worked. David flew in from California. James brought Emma and Olivia, and Michael, sweet Michael, who looked nothing like Victoria but had her brilliant mind wrapped in a gentle soul, sat nervously beside Thomas. I want you all to know something, I said. Your mothers were sick. Not mentally ill in a way that excused their actions, but sick with greed, with emptiness, with a hunger that could never be satisfied. That sickness is not in your blood. It's not hereditary. It was a choice they made, and you can choose differently. How do you know? Michael asked quietly. How do you know we won't turn out like them? I pulled him into my arms, this grandson I'd just met who smelled like teenage anxiety and hope. Because you're asking that question. Because it worries you. Your mothers never worried about being good. They only worried about having more. The fact that you care, that all of you care, proves you're already different. We're going to sell the house, Thomas announced. Buy something smaller, set up trusts for all of you. Not millions, that kind of money corrupts. But enough for college, for starting your lives without the desperation that consumed your mothers. We don't want money, Nicole said firmly. We want family. We want Sunday dinners and birthday parties and Christmas mornings. We want what they stole from us, time with our grandparents. If you find this part truly thought-provoking, go ahead and hit like to show your support. Do you feel the same way as the character in this story? Share your thoughts in the comments, I'd love to hear from you. And so we began again, this strange, fractured, beautiful family built on the ashes of our tragedy. The monsters were dead, but love, real love, not the performed kind, survived. That's all that mattered. 6 months had passed since that night with my grandchildren, and I thought we'd finally found peace. I was wrong. The knock on my door at 2 a.m. shattered that illusion like glass. Detective Morrison stood there, rain-soaked and grim. Behind him were 2 FBI agents in dark suits that screamed federal authority. Mrs. Sullivan, we need you to come with us. Now. What's happened? Thomas demanded, appearing behind me in his robe. Your daughter's accounts in Switzerland, someone's been accessing them. 3 days ago, $28 million was transferred out. The DNA on the hostel room keycard used to retrieve their hidden documents? It doesn't match Victoria or Stephanie. My knees buckled. You mean? We mean one of them might still be alive. The ride to FBI headquarters was silent except for my pounding heart. In the sterile interrogation room, they showed me security footage from a Zurich bank dated 3 days ago. A woman in a wheelchair, face covered in bandages, being wheeled in by a nurse. The woman's hands, the only visible part of her, signed document after document. The signatures matched Stephanie's perfectly, Agent Rodriguez said. But the hand itself looked closer. I leaned in, and my blood turned to ice. The woman's left hand had a scar across the palm, a distinctive C-shaped scar. I knew that scar. I'd stitched it myself when Victoria was 12, after she'd grabbed a broken bottle during one of her tantrums. Victoria's alive, I whispered. It appears so. The body identified as Victoria was so disfigured from the gunshot that Swiss authorities relied on Stephanie's identification and the documents found. But we now believe Victoria shot Stephanie, staged her own death using a homeless woman's body she'd murdered earlier, and has been hiding, waiting for things to cool down. The room spun violently. I barely made it to the wastebasket before vomiting, my body's response to this ultimate betrayal. One daughter had murdered the other and was now coming for me. There's more, Morrison said gently. We intercepted communications. She's already in Boston. Has been for 2 weeks, watching you, your grandchildren. She knows about all 5 of them now. No, I gasped. No, she can't, the children. They're all in protective custody as of an hour ago, Agent Rodriguez assured me, but Victoria sent this. He handed me a tablet showing an email with a video attachment. Victoria's face filled the screen, scarred, twisted from badly healed wounds, but unmistakably her, Hello, Mother. Surprised? You shouldn't be. I was always the smarter one. Stephanie thought she was poisoning me, but I switched our cups. She poisoned herself while I built immunity. When she realized what I'd done, she shot me, but her hands were shaking from the antifreeze. She only grazed my skull. The homeless woman I'd befriended, Martha, wasn't so lucky. Same height, same build. And after a bullet to the face, who could tell the difference? I let Stephanie bleed out slowly. Held her hand while she died, actually. She cried for you at the end. Called for mommy like a child. Pathetic. Now, let's discuss terms. I want everything the trust fund Aunt Colleen revealed. The Blackwell payoff money, Thomas's business assets, all of it. $50 million, Mother. You have 48 hours. If you refuse or contact the authorities, wait, you already have. Well, then you know what comes next. The children, Mother, 5 grandchildren. Accidents happen so easily to children. Emma and Olivia are in swimming lessons at the Brookline YMCA. Shallow water blackout is so tragic. David takes the subway to school. Platform accidents are shockingly common. Nicole jogs alone in Central Park. And Michael sweet, trusting Michael accepts candy from strangers. 48 hours. The money or your grandchildren? Your choice. The video ended. I was sobbing so hard I couldn't breathe, my chest feeling like it was being crushed in a vice. My surviving daughter was threatening my grandchildren, using the same calculated cruelty she'd used to murder her sister. We'll find her, Agent Rodriguez promised. She's had 6 months to plan this, Thomas said grimly. She knows we're watching the children now. This is misdirection. She's after something else. He was right. The next morning, while FBI agents surrounded my grandchildren like human shields, Victoria struck somewhere else entirely. Mrs. Chen, my dear neighbor, was found unconscious in her home, a note pinned to her chest. Wrong choice, Mother. This is strike 1. You have 36 hours left. Next time it won't be just unconsciousness. V. Mrs. Chen survived but remained in a coma. The doctors found massive doses of benzodiazepine in her system, the same drug Victoria had been giving me. That night, unable to sleep, I went through Victoria's childhood room one more time, searching for any clue to where she might be hiding. Behind her bookshelf, I found something I'd never seen a hidden journal from when she was 14. Practiced my crying face in the mirror for an hour today. Almost have it perfect. Mom falls for tears every time. So stupid. Stephanie's getting better at it too, but I'm still the master. We're going to be so rich when they're dead. Note to self. Make it look like an accident. Maybe carbon monoxide? Research more. 14 years old and already planning our murders. The pages went on, documenting every manipulation, every calculated tear, every I love you that was nothing but performance. The next strike came 24 hours later. Father Michael collapsed during morning mass, poisoned communion wine. He survived, but barely. The note read, Strike 2, 12 hours left. She's systematically attacking everyone who helped you, Morrison observed. She blames them for her plan failing. But I knew Victoria better than that. This wasn't about blame, it was about isolation. She was removing my support system, creating terror, making me so desperate I'd pay anything to make it stop. With 6 hours left on her deadline, I made a decision that Thomas fought against but couldn't stop. I'm going to meet her, I announced. Alone. Absolutely not, Morrison said. She's my daughter. My responsibility. I created this monster, I need to face her. I sent Victoria an email from my phone. Copley Square. Midnight. I'll have the account numbers. Come alone. Her response was immediate. See you soon, Mommy. At 11:30, I stood in Copley Square, the FBI supposedly hidden all around me, though I couldn't see them. The square was empty, except for a few homeless individuals huddled in doorways. At exactly midnight, one of them stood up, removing a dirty hood. Victoria. She'd been there all along, probably for hours, watching the FBI set up their positions. Even destroyed, scarred, and hunted, she was still 3 steps ahead. Hello, Mother, she said, her voice raspy from the damage the bullet had done to her throat. You look old. Stress, I suppose. Victoria, please. Please what? Please don't hurt the grandchildren you hid from us? Please don't take the money you claim doesn't matter? Please forgive you for raising me to be a monster? I didn't raise you to be this. She laughed, a horrible sound like grinding glass. No. You raised me to be poor, to accept scraps, to be grateful for hand-me-downs and second-hand love. You raised me to be a victim, Mother. I chose to be a predator instead. You chose to be a murderer. So did you, the moment you called the FBI instead of paying. Every person I hurt from now on, their blood is on your hands. She pulled out a phone, showing a live video feed. Michael, my 15-year-old grandson, walking alone on a dark street. A van pulled up beside him. One word from me, and he disappears forever, Victoria said coldly. Victoria, he's your son. He's a loose end, just like Stephanie was. Just like you are. That's when I saw it, her hand shaking slightly. Not from fear or nerves, but from neurological damage. The antifreeze Stephanie had given her before Victoria switched the cups, she'd gotten some of it. She was dying, slowly, her organs shutting down one by one. You're dying, I said. The poisoning you didn't escape it completely. Her face contorted with rage. 3 months, the doctors say. Maybe 6 if I'm lucky. Just enough time to watch you suffer like I've suffered. To take everything from you like you took everything from me. I gave you everything. You gave me nothing but shame. Every sacrifice you threw in my face, every guilt trip, every reminder that we were poor because of us, you made me hate myself before I learned to hate you. The FBI moved in then, but Victoria was ready. She pressed a button on her phone, and explosions rocked the square smoke bombs she'd planted earlier. In the chaos and confusion, she vanished, but not before whispering in my ear. Check your pocket, Mother. Inside was a photo, all 5 of my grandchildren at a park, taken with a telephoto lens. On the back, written in Victoria's hand, I can reach them anytime, anywhere, the money or their lives. You have 3 days to decide who you love more, your money or your grandchildren. Choose wisely. You won't see me coming next time. The 3 days Victoria gave me passed in a blur of FBI safe houses, encrypted phone calls, and sleepless nights. My grandchildren were moved every 6 hours to different locations, their lives uprooted by the monster I'd given birth to. On the morning of the 3rd day, I made a decision that would either save them or damn us all. I'm going to give her the money, I announced to the room full of federal agents. Mrs. Sullivan, the can't let you Agent Rodriguez began. You can't stop me. It's my money, my choice, and they're my grandchildren she's threatening. Thomas grabbed my shoulders, his calloused hands gentle but firm. Maggie, she'll kill them anyway. You know this. Victoria doesn't leave witnesses. Then what do you suggest? I screamed, finally breaking after 72 hours of held-together composure. Let her pick them off one by one? Watch her torture them to torture me? That's when Nicole spoke up from the corner where she'd been silently working on her laptop. Grandmother, I found something. In Mom's old financial records, there's a pattern. Every time she made a large withdrawal, she visited the same location afterward, a storage unit in Quincy. We checked all her properties, Morrison started. Not under her name, Nicole interrupted. Under Martha Hendricks, the homeless woman she murdered and used as her body double. She bought it in Martha's name 6 months before the murder. Within an hour, we had a warrant. The storage unit was small, climate-controlled, and filled with horrors I'll never unsee. Hundreds of photos of our family spanning decades, but with faces scratched out or burned. Videos of Thomas and me taken without our knowledge, eating dinner, sleeping, living our quiet lives while being stalked by our own daughter. But the worst discovery was in a lockbox. Medical records showing Victoria had been pregnant 4 times, not twice. 2 other children we never knew about, both given up for adoption at birth, their records sealed. More grandchildren somewhere in the world, hidden like shameful secrets. There's something else, the FBI tech announced, pulling up files from a hidden hard drive. She's been in contact with someone. Regular emails for the past 3 months. The emails loaded on the screen and my legs gave out. The correspondent was listed as S. Stefania. That's impossible, Thomas said. We saw her body. But as we read through the emails, the impossible became undeniable. The messages were filled with details only Stephanie would know, references to childhood memories, inside jokes between the sisters. The last email, dated 2 days ago. V, they think I'm dead. The body you identified as me was perfect, same height, build, even had my appendectomy scar thanks to your careful selection. The homeless woman you befriended, Maria, was the ideal double. I've been in Montreal waiting. Are you ready for phase 3, S? Victoria's response, almost. Mother's about to break. Once we have the money, we disappear forever. New faces, new names, new lives. Just like we always planned. They were both alive. Both my daughters had faked their deaths, murdered innocent homeless women, and were now working together to destroy me completely. The betrayal was so absolute, so devastating that my body shut down. I collapsed, convulsing, foam forming at my mouth as my brain simply refused to process this level of evil from my own children. I woke up in the hospital again, but this time was different. This time I woke up angry. Not sad, not broken, but filled with a rage so pure it felt like rebirth. "Where are my grandchildren?" were my first words. "Safe," Thomas assured me. "But Maggie, there's more." The FBI traced the emails. Stephanie's been living in Boston for 2 months, right under our noses. She's been working at the same homeless shelter where she found her victims, posing as a social worker named Sarah Mills. "She's hunting," I whispered, "looking for more body doubles." My phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. "Time's up, Mother. Did you know Stephanie's been visiting Michael's school? She's his new guidance counselor. He trusts Miss Suri." Mills is completely. Told her all about his fears, his hopes, his safe spaces. One word from me, and she acts. "The money or your grandson. You have 1 hour." The FBI mobilized immediately, but I knew we were too late. Stephanie had been embedding herself in Michael's life for 2 months. She knew his schedule, his friends, his vulnerabilities. She was the perfect predator, wearing the perfect disguise, a helpful, caring counselor. Morrison's phone rang. His face went white as he listened. "Michael's missing. He left school with Miss Mills 20 minutes ago for a special college prep session. His phone's been turned off." The room exploded into action, but I remained still, my mind racing through 45 years of memories, looking for something, anything that would tell me where Stephanie would take him. Then it hit me, the place where everything started. "The house," I said. "Our old house in Medford. The one we lived in when they were children. Victoria kept it, paid the taxes in cash. That's where they are." The FBI convoy raced through Boston traffic, sirens wailing, but I knew we might be too late. My daughters had been planning this for years, every contingency accounted for, every move calculated. But they'd made one mistake. They'd let me live long enough to learn their patterns. We arrived at the house, a rundown triple-decker I hadn't seen in 15 years. The windows were boarded, the yard overgrown, but a faint light flickered in the basement. The same basement where Victoria and Stephanie had played as children, where they'd whispered their secrets and made their plans. "Let me go in alone," I said. "Absolutely not," Rodriguez protested. "They're my daughters, my responsibility, my failure. Let me try to save my grandson." I entered through the front door, which hung open like a mouth waiting to swallow me. The house smelled of mold and decay, but underneath was something familiar, Victoria's perfume, the same one she'd worn since high school. They wanted me to know they were here. The basement door was open. I descended the creaking stairs, each step a journey back through time. At the bottom, illuminated by battery-powered lanterns, sat my daughters, alive, whole. Monsters wearing the faces of the babies I'd once nursed. Michael was tied to a chair between them, duct tape over his mouth, eyes wide with terror. When he saw me, he started crying. "Hello, Mother," Victoria and Stephanie said in perfect unison, a practiced greeting that sent chills through my spine. "Let him go," I said. "You want me, not him." "Actually," Stephanie said, examining her nails, "we want both. You see, Michael here is special. He's the only one of our children who actually inherited something useful, your capacity for love. Watch." She ripped the tape from his mouth. "Michael, tell Grandma what you told me about her." Through his tears, Michael said, "I told her you're the best person I know, that you took us in without question, loved us despite what our mothers did, that you're my hero." "Sweet, isn't it?" Victoria mocked. "He loves you so much, which means watching him die will destroy you completely. The perfect revenge for a mother who valued love over money. You want money? I'll give you everything. Every penny." "Too late," Stephanie said. "We already took it. While you were unconscious in the hospital, Victoria used your thumbprint to access your phone, transferred everything to offshore accounts. We're already rich, Mother. This isn't about money anymore. Then what? Pain, Victoria said simply. Pure, complete pain. You chose love over us. You made us feel worthless with your sacrifices, your martyrdom, your constant reminders of how much you'd given up. So now we take away the only thing you have left these grandchildren you love more than you ever loved us. That's not true. I loved you both with everything I had. Everything wasn't enough, Stephanie screamed. We needed more than your love. We needed respect, admiration, fear. We needed to be more than poor girls from Medford with a mother who cleaned bedpans. The truth finally hit me. They hadn't hated me for being poor. They'd hated themselves for coming from poverty, and I was the mirror that reflected their shame. I'm sorry, I said, and meant it. I'm sorry I couldn't give you more. Sorry I made you feel less than. But killing Michael won't change who you are. No, Victoria agreed, pulling out a syringe filled with clear liquid. But it will change who you are, the grandmother who couldn't save him. The woman who lost everything because she chose love over family loyalty. She moved toward Michael, needle raised, and I did the only thing I could. I pulled out Thomas's old service revolver, the one he'd hidden in our bedroom for 40 years, the one I'd brought knowing this moment would come. Stop, I said, aiming at Victoria's heart, or I'll shoot. My daughters laughed in perfect synchronization, a sound from nightmares. You won't, Stephanie said. You're not a killer, Mother. You're a lover, a giver, a sacrificer. You don't have it in you. But she was wrong. Motherhood is about sacrifice, yes. But sometimes the greatest sacrifice is becoming the monster yourself to stop the monsters you created. I pulled the trigger. The bullet tore through the air, but not into Victoria's heart. I'd aimed for the wooden beam beside her head, a warning shot that splintered wood across her face. She screamed, dropping the syringe, which shattered on the concrete floor. The next one won't miss, I said, my voice steady despite my trembling hands. Let Michael go, or I'll do what you never thought I could. I'll end you both. Stephanie laughed, but there was uncertainty in her eyes. You just proved you can't. You had the shot and missed on purpose. Did I? I aimed at Stephanie now. Maybe I just wanted you to suffer first. To feel the fear Michael's feeling. To know that your mother, the weak, pathetic woman you despised, holds your life in her hands. That's when the FBI burst in, but something was wrong. They weren't moving to arrest my daughters. Instead, Agent Rodriguez pointed his weapon at me. Mrs. Sullivan, put the gun down. What? I gasped. They're right there. They kidnapped Michael. Mrs. Sullivan, Rodriguez said carefully, there's no one else here, just you and Michael. I turned back to where Victoria and Stephanie had been standing. The space was empty, had been empty. The lanterns illuminated nothing but shadows, and my grandson tied to a chair, tears streaming down his face as he looked at me with confusion and fear. No, I whispered. No, they were here, both of them. I saw them. Dr. Patricia Kumar, my former colleague, stepped forward from behind the FBI agents. Maggie, honey, you're having a psychotic break. The stress, the trauma, Victoria and Stephanie are dead. We confirmed it through dental records last week. The bodies in Switzerland were really them. But the emails, the storage unit, the evidence, all fabricated, Morrison said gently, by Harrison and Marcus. They've been playing you, making you think your daughters were alive to drive you insane, to get you declared incompetent so they could claim the estate as next of kin through their marriages. The gun fell from my numb fingers. The room spun violently, reality and delusion crashing together like tectonic plates. I collapsed beside Michael's chair, my hands shaking as I untied him. Grandma, he whispered, there was never anyone else here. You've been talking to empty air for 20 minutes. The truth hit me like a sledgehammer. The antifreeze my daughters had been giving me, the small doses over months, had caused permanent neurological damage. I was hallucinating, seeing my dead daughters, hearing their voices. Harrison and Marcus had discovered my condition and exploited it, sending fake emails, planting fake evidence, driving me deeper into madness. But then Michael said something that changed everything. Grandma, wait, I was brought here. Someone did kidnap me. A woman who said she was Miss Mills. The FBI agents exchanged glances. Rodriguez pulled up his phone, showing a photo. Was this her? Michael shook his head. No, younger. Pretty. She had a scar on her hand, shaped like a C. My blood froze. That scar. Victoria's scar. But it couldn't be unless... Check the dental records again, I demanded. Check them against DNA. Not just visual identification. Mrs. Sullivan, we've been through this. Check them! 3 hours later, we had the answer. The dental records were real, but they belonged to Nicole and another young woman, both murdered and surgically altered to match Victoria and Stephanie's dental work. My daughters had killed their own children, used them as body doubles, and vanished completely. The woman who'd taken Michael, she'd had surgery to look different, but the scar remained. Victoria was alive, transformed, living under another identity. And if she was alive, Stephanie probably was too. "Where did Miss Mills take you first?" Morrison asked Michael urgently. "To a house in Beacon Hill. She said she needed to pick something up. There was another woman there, blonde, who called her V. Stephanie. They were both in Boston, both transformed, both hidden in plain sight. We raced to the Beacon Hill address Michael described. The townhouse was registered to a Dr. Sarah Mills, a identity purchased on the dark web, complete with credentials and history. Inside, we found an apartment that was both luxurious and clinical, like a high-end medical facility. On the walls were photos, hundreds of them. But not of our family. These were photos of other elderly couples, other wealthy parents with disappointing children. Red X's marked through dozens of faces. Victoria and Stephanie hadn't just been planning to kill us. We were practice. They were becoming professional killers, targeting wealthy elderly parents for their ungrateful children. A laptop was still open on the dining table, showing a website, inheritanceNow.com, discrete solutions for delayed legacies. The client list included names I recognized from Boston Society pages, children of millionaires, all waiting impatiently for their parents to die. My God, Rodriguez breathed. They turned patricide into a business model. That's when we heard a timer beeping from the bedroom. Morrison approached carefully, pushing open the door. Inside, strapped to the bed, was an elderly woman I recognized from the newspaper, Martha Cabot, heir to a shopping mall fortune. She was unconscious but alive, an IV in her arm slowly dripping clear fluid. Antifreeze, the FBI chemist confirmed. Diluted, designed to kill slowly over weeks. Make it look like natural causes. We'd stumbled onto something massive. Victoria and Stephanie hadn't just faked their deaths to escape. They'd done it to start a murder-for-hire business, specializing in exactly what they'd tried with us. "Where are they now?" I demanded. Michael, still shaking, remembered something. The blonde woman said something about the final appointment. Said after today they'd have enough to disappear forever. She mentioned the harbor. Boston Harbor, dozens of warehouses, any one of which could hide my murderous daughters, but I knew them better than anyone. They'd choose somewhere meaningful, somewhere that would hurt me if I ever found out. "Thomas's first workshop," I said suddenly. Before Sullivan Plumbing became big, he rented a space at Pier 47. They'd go there. It's where he taught them to use tools when they were little, where they first learned they could build things or destroy them. The FBI convoy screamed toward the harbor, but I knew we might be too late. How many elderly parents had they already killed? How many more were on their list? At Pier 47, the old workshop looked abandoned, but fresh tire tracks led to the door. Inside, we could hear voices, not Victoria and Stephanie's, but elderly voices, weak and confused. We burst in to find a chamber of horrors. 6 elderly people were tied to chairs, IVs in their arms, in various stages of antifreeze poisoning. And standing over them, wearing surgical masks and nurses' uniforms, were 2 women I didn't recognize, young, beautiful, with faces that belonged on magazine covers. But I knew those eyes. A mother always knows her children's eyes. "Hello, Mother," Victoria said, pulling down her mask to reveal a face that had been completely reconstructed. "I told you that you wouldn't see us coming." Stephanie removed her mask too, showing a face equally transformed. Amazing what a few $100,000 in plastic surgery can buy. We don't even look like sisters anymore. "Though we're closer than ever," Victoria added. "Nothing bonds siblings like matricide." Well, attempted matricide. They stood there, my daughters in strangers' faces, surrounded by dying elderly people, and they were smiling, actually smiling. "You're not going to shoot us, Mother," Stephanie said confidently. "You couldn't before, you can't now. Because despite everything, you still love us. It's your fatal flaw, you can't stop loving the monsters you created." She was right. God help me. She was right. Even seeing them like this, knowing they'd murdered Nicole and another innocent girl, knowing they were serial killers now, some part of me still saw the babies I'd carried, the toddlers who'd called me mama, the little girls who'd held my hands. But then I looked at the elderly people dying around us, and I knew what I had to do. I didn't shoot my daughters. I shot the IV bags instead, stopping the poison flow while screaming, "Now!" The FBI rushed in, but Victoria and Stephanie were already moving, having planned for this too. Smoke grenades filled the air, and in the chaos, I heard them escaping through a back exit we hadn't known existed. If this part really struck a chord with you, tap that like button to let me know you're with me. Do you see yourself in the character's journey? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I can't wait to hear your take. By the time the smoke cleared, they were gone. But the 6 elderly victims were saved, and on the table, Victoria had left one final message. You chose them over us. Again. We're done being your daughters, Margaret. Next time we meet, we're strangers. And strangers don't show mercy. Enjoy what's left of your sanity. The antifreeze will take that too, eventually. Consider it our parting gift. They vanished that night, completely. New faces, new names, probably new countries. The FBI found evidence they'd already murdered 14 elderly parents across 3 states, collecting over $30 million in fees from impatient heirs. My daughters had become everything I'd tried to raise them not to be, and they'd done it with surgical precision, literally and figuratively. 3 months passed after the Harbor incident. 3 months of FBI protection, therapy sessions, and nightmares where I saw my daughters' new faces everywhere in grocery store clerks, in passing strangers, in the mirror when exhaustion played tricks on my eyes. The antifreeze damage was progressing slowly but steadily. Some days I couldn't tell what was real anymore. It was David who noticed the pattern first. My brilliant 15-year-old grandson, hunched over his laptop at our safe house in Vermont, suddenly gasped, "Grandma, look at this. Elderly deaths in wealthy families, all ruled natural causes, all within 6 months of major inheritance changes." He pulled up a map with red pins across the country. 17 new cases since the Harbor. They're accelerating. Each pin represented a family destroyed, children who'd paid my daughters to murder their parents. The business model was horrifyingly successful. Victoria and Stephanie had turned patricide into a franchise operation. That's when my phone rang. Unknown international number. "Hello, Mother." Victoria's voice, even through whatever voice modulator she was using, made my stomach clench. "I'm calling to tell you something important. We're done." Done? With the business. With running. With everything. Stephanie's dying. The antifreeze she thought she was giving me, she'd been dosing herself by accident for months. Karma's funny that way. She has maybe 3 weeks left. "Where are you?" I whispered. "Close enough to watch you through the window. Turn around." I spun toward the safe house window. Across the street, in a parked sedan, 2 figures sat motionless. Even from this distance, I could see they were both devastatingly beautiful, the faces they'd bought with blood money. "We're turning ourselves in," Victoria continued, "but only to you, alone. No FBI, no Thomas, no grandchildren, just mother and daughters, one last time. It's a trap. Everything's been a trap, Mother. Our entire lives have been traps we set for ourselves. 1 hour. The place where you taught us to pray. Come alone or we disappear forever." And the killing continues. The line went dead. The place where I taught them to pray, St. Catherine's Church, where Father Michael had baptized them 45 years ago, where they'd taken First Communion in white dresses I'd sewn by hand, where they'd pretended to believe in God while planning to play him. I should have told the FBI, should have taken backup. But something in Victoria's voice, exhaustion, maybe even regret, made me go alone. Thomas would never forgive me. The FBI would call it insane. But a mother's insanity is sometimes the only sane response to insane children. St. Catherine stood empty in the afternoon light. I pushed open the heavy wooden doors, my footsteps echoing on stone floors that had witnessed centuries of confessions. They were sitting in the front pew, exactly where they'd sat as children, their surgically perfected faces turned toward the altar. Stephanie looked skeletal despite her new face, her body consuming itself from the inside. The antifreeze had destroyed her kidneys, her liver. She was dying in the most painful way possible, the same death she'd planned for me. "You came," she whispered, her voice like broken glass. "I didn't think you would. I'm your mother. I'll always come." Victoria laughed bitterly. "Even now? Even after we killed Nicole? After we built an empire on murdering parents? Even now." I sat beside them, these strangers wearing my daughter's souls. The silence stretched until Stephanie broke it with a confession that shattered what remained of my heart. "We killed our first parent when we were 19, she said. "Not for money, for practice. Mrs. Henderson from our dorm. She was visiting her daughter, reminded us of you always sacrificing, always suffering. We put antifreeze in her tea just to see if we could. She died thinking it was kidney failure." My body convulsed, dry heaving, nothing but bile and horror. 26 years. They'd been killing for 26 years, and I'd never known. "How many?" I managed to ask. 43 confirmed, Victoria said clinically. "Probably more we forgot. It became routine, like taking out trash." "Why?" The question ripped from my throat. "What did I do to make you this way?" "You loved us," Stephanie said simply. "You loved us so much it made us sick. Every sacrifice was a chain. Every 'I did this for you' was a nail in our coffins. We couldn't breathe under the weight of your love, so we learned to hate instead. Hate was freedom." Victoria pulled out a gun, Thomas's service revolver, the one I'd dropped at the harbor. "We took this as a souvenir. Seemed fitting that your gun should end this." "You're going to kill me?" "No, Mother. We're going to do something worse." Victoria placed the gun in my hand, closing my fingers around it. "We're going to make you choose. Kill us now, end this properly, or let us go and live with knowing we'll kill again, because that's who we are, killers. It's the only thing we're good at." "The FBI is coming," I lied. "No, they're not," Stephanie coughed, blood speckling her lips. "You came alone because you still hope we can be saved." "But we can't, Mother. We're rabid dogs wearing human faces. Put us down. I won't kill my daughters." "We're not your daughters!" Victoria screamed, her perfect face contorting with rage. "Your daughters died the day you couldn't afford to buy us the same clothes as the rich kids at school. Your daughters died when they realized love doesn't pay bills. These things wearing your daughters' memories were just shadows, echoes, mockeries of what you wanted us to be." She grabbed my hand holding the gun, pressing the barrel against her chest. "Do it. For once in your life, stop being weak. Stop choosing love over logic. We murdered your granddaughter. We tortured elderly people for money. We turned killing parents into a business model. What more do we have to do before you stop loving us?" That's when the church doors burst open. Not FBI, not police, but the last person any of us expected: Nicole. Alive, bandaged, scarred, but breathing. "Hello, Mom," she said to Victoria. "Surprised? You should have checked for a pulse. You were always sloppy when you were angry." Victoria's new face went white. "Impossible. I shot you in the head. Grazed my skull. Knocked me unconscious. Your aim was off because you were drunk, as usual. I've been in witness protection for 3 months, helping the FBI track you. Every murder, every client, every offshore account, I gave them everything." The sound of sirens filled the air, real ones this time, getting closer. "You set us up," Stephanie gasped, looking at me with something almost like admiration. "You knew Nicole was alive. This whole meeting was a trap." I shook my head. "I didn't know. I came alone, just like you asked. But Nicole's smarter than all of us. She knew you'd eventually contact me. She's been watching, waiting. Just like we taught her," Victoria said, and for the first time in decades I heard pride in her voice. "We raised a proper predator after all." "No," Nicole said firmly. "You raised a survivor. There's a difference. I hunt killers, not innocents." The FBI surrounded the church. Through the stained glass windows, red and blue lights painted everything in alternating colors of emergency and authority. Victoria stood slowly, pulling something from her pocket, not a weapon but a photo. The old one, from when they were 6, holding my hands at this very church after their first communion. "Keep this," she said, pressing it into my palm. "Remember us this way if you can, before we became monsters, before money mattered more than blood. Victoria Sullivan, Stephanie Sullivan, you're under arrest for multiple counts of first-degree murder," Agent Rodriguez announced as tactical teams flooded in. As they cuffed my daughters, these beautiful strangers who'd destroyed everything for money, Stephanie looked back one last time. "Mom," she said, the word so small, so childlike, it broke something inside me permanently. "I'm scared." "I know, baby," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "I know." They led them away in chains. These women who'd been babies in my arms, toddlers at my feet, children in my heart. The last time I'd ever see them outside a courtroom. Nicole helped me stand on shaking legs. "Grandma, I'm sorry I didn't tell you I was alive," the FBI said. "You saved me," I interrupted, pulling her close. "You saved us all." That night, in the safe house with Thomas and all 5 of my real grandchildren, the ones who chose love over money, I burned the photograph Victoria had given me. Not because I wanted to forget, but because I needed to remember them as they truly were. Broken from the beginning, choosing darkness when offered light, picking money over meaning every single time. The trial would come, the testimonies would devastate, the victims' families would demand justice. But tonight, surrounded by the family that actually loved me, I finally understood the truth. Some children are born to break their mothers' hearts. Mine just happened to do it with surgical precision, literally and figuratively, for profit and with pride. But I survived them. We all did. And that's the only victory that matters. The federal courthouse in Boston became a media circus the morning the trial began. News vans lined the streets, reporters shoving microphones at anyone connected to the case. The daughters of death, they called Victoria and Stephanie. The tabloids ran split-screen photos my girls at age 5 in their Easter dresses beside their new faces, beautiful and cold as marble statues. I sat in the witness waiting room, my hands trembling so violently that Thomas had to hold my water glass to my lips. The neurological damage from the antifreeze was getting worse. Some days I couldn't distinguish between memories and hallucinations. Today, mercifully, was clear. Mrs. Sullivan, the prosecutor, Jennifer Wu, said gently, "You'll be called first. Are you ready?" Ready? How could anyone be ready to testify against their own daughters for 43 murders? The courtroom was packed. I saw the families of victims, elderly couples who'd survived, adult children whose parents hadn't been so lucky. Their eyes followed me with a mixture of sympathy and blame. After all, I'd created the monsters who'd destroyed their families. Victoria and Stephanie sat at the defense table, their new faces impassive. They'd had more work done in custody, their lawyers argued. It was necessary medical treatment for injuries. Now they looked like magazine models, not serial killers. Victoria's eyes met mine, and for just a second, I saw a flicker of something. Regret? No annoyance that I was still alive to testify. "State your name for the record," the court clerk requested. "Margaret Rose Sullivan. I'm 72 years old, and I'm the mother of the defendants." Prosecutor Wu began with the easy questions: my background, my marriage to Thomas, the births of my daughters. Then came the harder part. "Mrs. Sullivan, when did you first suspect your daughters were capable of violence?" I closed my eyes, remembering. When they were 8, I found Victoria's diary. She'd written about putting rat poison in her teacher's coffee because the teacher gave her a B+. She'd drawn pictures of how the teacher would die. When I confronted her, she said it was just a story. I believed her because I needed to believe her. "Did you seek help?" I took them to therapy. The psychologist said they were gifted, that dark imagination was common in intelligent children. He said I was overreacting, that my poverty was making me paranoid about my daughters' futures. The room was silent except for the court reporter's keys clicking. "Tell us about Nicole," Wu prompted. This was agony. Nicole was Victoria's daughter. My granddaughter. Brilliant, kind, everything Victoria wasn't. When Victoria discovered Nicole had been helping me, she shot her own daughter. Shot her in the head and used her body as a decoy to fake her own death. Gasps rippled through the gallery. Even the judge looked shaken. "Nicole survived," I continued, nodding toward where she sat with my other grandchildren. But Victoria didn't know that. She thought she'd murdered her own child for her escape plan. Objection. Victoria's lawyer, a shark in a $3,000 suit, stood up, prejudicial and inflammatory. "It's the truth," I said directly to him. "Your client murdered her daughter, or thought she did. That's not prejudice, it's fact." The judge overruled the objection. Wu showed the court exhibits, the storage unit photos, the recordings Thomas had made, the confession album Victoria had sent. Then came the worst part, victim testimony. An elderly man named Robert Walsh took the stand. His wife of 52 years had been Victoria and Stephanie's third victim, poisoned slowly over 6 weeks while his daughters paid them $200,000. She died thinking she had dementia. He wept, kept apologizing for forgetting things, for being a burden. But it was the antifreeze. They stole her mind before they stole her life. And our daughters paid for it, arranged it like hiring a cleaning service. One by one, 43 stories of horror, 43 elderly parents murdered for money by their own children, with my daughters as the weapons. By the lunch break, several jurors were crying. During recess, Stephanie's lawyer approached me. "Your daughter wants to speak with you." "Which one?" "Stephanie. She's dying. The antifreeze she has may be days left. She wants to tell you something." Against Thomas's protests, against all logic, I went to the holding room. Stephanie sat shackled to a wheelchair, her perfect new face grotesque against her dying body. She'd lost so much weight that her bones showed through her designer suit. "Mother," she rasped, "I need you to know something. We weren't always monsters." "I know," I whispered. "No, you don't. When we were 12, Victoria and I made a pact. We were at Ashley Blackwell's birthday party, the one with the pony rides and the chocolate fountain. Her mother said to us, 'It must be so hard being Margaret's daughters. All that sacrifice, all that poverty, you poor things.'" She coughed, blood speckling her lips. "That's when we decided. We'd never be poor things again. We'd be rich things, whatever it took. Even murder? Especially murder. Every parent we killed, we pretended it was you. Not because we hated you, but because we hated ourselves for coming from you. For being the daughters of a nurse who cleaned bedpans, for wearing handmade clothes to rich kids' parties. I loved you," I said helplessly. "That was the problem. Your love reminded us of what we were. We needed to forget. The money helped us forget." A guard knock time was up. As I stood to leave, Stephanie grabbed my hand with surprising strength. "Victoria's pregnant," she whispered. 3 months. She got pregnant in Switzerland, right before we were caught. She hasn't told anyone because she's planning to use the baby. Bargaining chip for a lesser sentence. Don't let her. Don't let her bring another monster into this world. I stumbled back to the courtroom, my mind reeling. Victoria pregnant. Another generation of poison growing in her womb. When court resumed, Victoria took the stand in her own defense. Her lawyer had advised against it, but Victoria's arrogance demanded center stage. "I'm not sorry," she said clearly, looking directly at the jury. "Every parent we killed was already dead inside loveless marriages, ungrateful children, meaningless lives. We just finished what time would have done anyway." "You murdered innocent people," Wu stated. "Innocent? They raised children who hated them enough to pay for their deaths. How innocent could they be? Like your mother raised you?" Victoria's composure cracked slightly. "My mother was different. She was a martyr. She wore her suffering like a crown, reminded us daily of everything she'd given up. At least our victims died quickly. She made us die slowly, from shame." "So you decided to kill her?" "We decided to free ourselves. And her. Death would have been a mercy compared to the life she'd built 48 years married to a plumber, living in a 4-bedroom prison, measuring success in casseroles and church attendance." I wanted to scream, to tell her about the joy in those simple things, the love in that ordinary life. But I stayed silent, watching my daughter destroy herself with her own words. "Are you pregnant?" Wu asked suddenly. Victoria's new face went pale. She glanced at Stephanie, who managed a small, victorious smile despite her pain. "Yes," Victoria admitted. "And what are your plans for this child?" "To bargain with it. Reduced sentence in exchange for giving it up for adoption. It's worth something to someone." The courtroom erupted. The judge banged his gavel, threatening to clear the gallery. In that chaos, I stood up. "Your Honor," I said loudly, "I want custody of that baby." Everyone froze. Victoria stared at me in shock. "You want to raise my child?" she said, incredulous. "After everything?" "Someone has to break the cycle," I replied. "Someone has to love that baby without conditions, without expectations, without price tags. Someone has to prove that love doesn't have to equal suffering." The baby will be a monster, like me. No, the baby will be a choice, like you were. And I'll make sure it chooses differently. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. Guilty on all counts. Life without parole for both of them. Stephanie would die in the prison hospital. Victoria would give birth in chains. As they led my daughters away for the last time, Victoria turned back. "The baby's name is Hope," she called out. I picked it as a joke. "Because I have none. But maybe you can make it mean something." 6 months later, I held Hope in the same hospital where I'd worked for 35 years, where I'd saved lives while my daughters planned to take them. She was perfect, 10 fingers, 10 toes, and eyes that hadn't yet learned to calculate the value of everything around her. "She looks like them," Thomas said softly. "She looks like possibility," I corrected. Around us stood my 5 grandchildren, Nicole, David, Michael, Emma, and Olivia, the family salvaged from the wreckage. They'd all survived their mothers. Now they'd help raise their sister, or cousin, or whatever Hope was to them. "We'll tell her the truth when she's old enough," Nicole said, holding Hope's tiny hand. "All of it. So she can choose to be different." "The truth," I agreed, though I knew I'd spend the rest of my life figuring out what that meant. The antifreeze damage was getting worse. Some days I forgot where I was, confused Thomas for a stranger, saw Victoria and Stephanie as children in my peripheral vision. The doctor said I had maybe 5 good years left. 5 years to raise Hope right. 5 years to break the cycle. 5 years to prove that love doesn't have to cost everything. It would have to be enough. It was all I had left to give. 2 weeks after the trial ended, Stephanie died in the prison hospital at 3:17 in the morning. I wasn't there. The warden had denied my request to be with her at the end. But a guard who'd shown her small kindnesses called me afterward. "She went peacefully," he said quietly. "Called for you at the end. Said, 'Tell Mom I finally understand.'" 3 days later, a package arrived at our new house. We'd moved to a smaller place in Quincy, away from the memories that haunted every corner of our Medford home. The package had been mailed the day Stephanie died, her final act in this world. Inside was a leather journal, every page filled with her meticulous handwriting. The first entry stopped my heart. "Mother, by the time you read this, I'll be dead. The antifreeze has destroyed everything, kidneys, liver, brain, fitting, really, destroyed by the same poison I fed to others. If there's a God, he has a sense of humor. I'm writing this because there are things you need to know, things Victoria will never tell you, things that might help you save Hope from becoming what we became. The first murder wasn't Mrs. Henderson. That was a lie to hurt you. The first was when we were 7. Remember Mr. Whiskers, our cat? He didn't die naturally. Victoria strangled him because he scratched her. I watched. I helped hide the body. We told you he ran away. And you believed us because you needed to believe we were good. We were never good, Mother. From the moment we could understand that others had more than us, we were poisoned by envy. Every birthday party in a bigger house, every Christmas with fewer presents than our classmates, every hand-me-down dress, they were drops of poison that accumulated in our souls until we were nothing but walking venom. You want to know the exact moment I became a monster? I was 9. You were working a double shift at the hospital. Dad was at a job site. Victoria and I broke into Mrs. Chen's house, sweet Mrs. Chen, who babysat us, who made us cookies. We stole $40 from her purse. When she noticed and asked us about it, we convinced her she was getting senile, that she'd forgotten spending it. Watching her doubt herself, seeing her cry from confusion, it gave me a feeling of power I'd never experienced. That's what you never understood, Mother. It wasn't about the money, it was about the power. The ability to make others suffer the confusion and helplessness we felt being poor in a rich world. I had to stop reading. My body convulsed with dry heaves, remembering Mrs. Chen's tears that day, how I'd comforted her, assured her she wasn't losing her mind. My daughters had been practicing cruelty while I was at work trying to provide for them. The journal continued. Victoria's baby Hope, she's not Harrison's. Victoria killed Harrison's father, remember? The baby's father is a Swiss banker she seduced for account access. She doesn't know I know this. She thinks she's so clever, but I've always been one step ahead. Except with the antifreeze. My one mistake. Here's what you need to know about saving Hope. Don't love her the way you loved us. Your love was suffocating, Mother. Every sacrifice you made was a chain around our necks. Every "I did this for you" was a debt we could never repay. We turned to evil because being good meant drowning in obligation. Love Hope quietly. Love her without announcement. Love her without expecting gratitude. Let her be free to be ungrateful, selfish, normal. Don't make her carry the weight of your suffering. And never ever tell her what we were, until she's old enough to understand that DNA isn't destiny. There's something else. We had a third sister. You miscarried her when we were 5. You thought we didn't know, but we heard you crying in the bathroom, saw the blood. We found the hospital papers. You named her Grace. We hated Grace. A dead sister you mourned more than you celebrated us living. Every year on what would have been her birthday, March 15th, you were sadder than usual. We noticed. Children always notice. We grew up competing with a ghost, and the ghost always won because she never disappointed you. Don't let Hope compete with our ghosts. We're dead. Let us stay that way. The next entry was dated the day before she died. The pain is extraordinary now. Every breath feels like swallowing glass. The doctors say my organs are shutting down in sequence, like lights going out in an office building. Victoria hasn't written or called. We spent our lives as partners in evil, and now she's abandoned me to die alone. Fitting. I dreamed about you last night. Not current you, young you. The mother who sang us to sleep, who made blanket forts during thunderstorms, who convinced us that spaghetti with butter was a feast fit for queens. In the dream, you were holding Grace, and she was alive, and Victoria and I didn't exist. You looked so happy. I woke up crying the first genuine tears I've shed since I was 7, and realized tears could be weapons. I want you to know something. We felt it. Your love. We felt every ounce of it. It wasn't that you loved us wrong, it's that we were broken receivers, taking in love and converting it to poison. Like those children born without the ability to feel pain, we were born without the ability to process love correctly. It turned to acid inside us. Don't blame yourself. You could have been perfect, rich, beautiful, educated, everything we said we wanted, and we still would have destroyed you. It's what we were. Scorpions. And scorpions sting because that's their nature, even if it means drowning in the river they're crossing. The final entry was barely legible, her handwriting shaking from the neurological damage. Can't see properly anymore. Hands won't stop shaking. This is my last entry. Tell Hope her mother was a monster who chose to be a monster. Tell her I was worse because I knew what I was and did it anyway. Tell her she has poison in her blood, but also your love in her bones, and the two might balance out if she's lucky. Victoria will come for Hope someday. When she gets out, and she will, she's too smart to die in prison. She'll come for the baby, not from love, but from ownership. She'll want to sculpt Hope into a weapon, a continuation of herself. Don't let her. Kill Victoria if you have to. I know you won't, you're too good, but I had to say it. She's not your daughter anymore. She's a disease in human form, and diseases need to be eradicated. My vision is going black around the edges now. I can hear nurses coming. This is it. Mom, I can call you that now. At the end, I'm sorry we weren't the daughters you deserved. I'm sorry we took your love and weaponized it. I'm sorry we turned your sacrifice into our excuse for evil. But I'm not sorry we're dying. The world is safer without us. Hope is safer without us. You're safer without us. Tell Thomas his workshop was the only place I ever felt momentarily human. All those hours he spent trying to teach us to build instead of destroy, they weren't completely wasted. I remembered them at the end. Tell my children, David, the others I hid, tell them their mother died knowing she didn't deserve them. Tell them to be everything I wasn't. Tell yourself, every day until you believe it, this wasn't your fault. It was never your fault. We were born wrong, and you loved us right, and sometimes that's the greatest tragedy of all, when perfect love meets irreparable brokenness. Goodbye, Mother. Thank you for never giving up on us, even when we gave up on ourselves, even when we tried to murder you, even when we became unforgivable. Your love was the only real thing in our false lives. I felt it. I destroyed it. I'm sorry. Stephanie. P.S. There's no money left. We spent it all trying to become people we could stand to see in mirrors. It didn't work. Save every penny for Hope. She'll need it for therapy. I held the journal to my chest and sobbed deep, primal, keening sobs that came from the cellular level. My daughter had died understanding what she was, had died with clarity about her evil, had died apologizing. It didn't absolve her. Nothing could absolve 43 murders. But it gave me something I hadn't expected: permission to grieve, permission to mourn the daughters I'd lost long before their bodies stopped breathing, permission to love Hope without the weight of her mother's sins. That night, holding baby Hope while she slept, I whispered promises to her. I'll love you quietly. I'll sacrifice without scorekeeping. I'll give without demanding gratitude. You'll be free to be ungrateful, to be selfish, to be normal. You'll never know the weight of my suffering because I won't make my suffering your burden. Thomas found me there at dawn, still holding Hope, Stephanie's journal scattered around us like fallen leaves. She understood at the end, I told him. She knew what they were. Does it help? He asked gently. No, I admitted. But it makes me understand how to raise hope. Love without weight. Sacrifice without scorekeeping. Give without demanding gratitude. Can you do that, after everything? I looked down at Hope, this baby who carried poison in her DNA but also possibility in her future. I have to. It's the only way to break the cycle, the only way to ensure she doesn't become them. Hope opened her eyes, Victoria's eyes, Stephanie's eyes, but also somehow her own. She didn't cry, just looked at me with that ancient wisdom babies sometimes have, as if she understood the weight of her inheritance and was already deciding what to do with it. You're going to be different, I whispered to her. You're going to be free. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I believed it might be possible. The day Victoria was sentenced to life without parole, she gave birth to Hope in chains at the federal medical facility. I was there, waiting outside the delivery room, listening to her scream not from pain but from rage that her body was betraying her, creating life when all she'd ever created was death. "Get it out of me," she shrieked. "Get this parasite out." The nurses later told me she refused to look at Hope, refused to hold her, signed away her parental rights while the umbilical cord was still being cut. When they brought Hope to me, still covered in birth fluids and crying with the desperate wail of the abandoned, Victoria's voice echoed from the delivery room. "Tell my mother she won. She gets to destroy another generation with her suffocating love." But as I held Hope for the first time, feeling her tiny fingers grip mine with surprising strength, I knew Victoria was wrong. This wasn't about winning or losing. This was about breaking cycles, about proving that DNA doesn't determine destiny. If this moment truly hit home for you, don't forget to tap that like button. It tells me you're right here with me. Can you see a bit of yourself in this story? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear what part spoke to you most. 6 months passed. Hope thrived in our care while Victoria rotted in federal prison. Then, on a cold October morning, I received a call that shattered our fragile peace. "Mrs. Sullivan, this is Warden Davidson. Victoria escaped during a medical transport. She killed 2 guards and a nurse. We believe she's heading to Boston." The phone slipped from my numb fingers. Thomas caught it, his face draining of color as he heard the details. Victoria had been faking a medical emergency, had concealed a makeshift weapon, had executed an escape plan she'd been crafting since the day she was sentenced. "She's coming for Hope," I whispered, my body starting to convulse with terror. Within hours, our house was surrounded by FBI agents. Nicole moved in with us, bringing a gun she'd learned to use after her mother tried to kill her. David and Michael boarded up windows while Emma and Olivia were sent to a safe house in Maine. Hope, blissfully unaware, slept in her crib, surrounded by armed guards. 3 days passed in suffocating tension. Then, on the 4th night, my phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello, Mother. I bet you thought those guards could protect you." I looked around frantically. The guards were all at their posts, alert, weapons ready. "I'm already inside," Victoria continued. "Have been for hours. Amazing what a new face and a stolen FBI badge can accomplish. Check on Hope." I ran to the nursery, my heart exploding with every step. Hope's crib was empty. In her place was a note. "Gone to where it all started. Come alone or she dies. You have 1 hour." I knew immediately the workshop, Thomas's original workshop at Pier 47, where this nightmare had begun, where she'd held Michael hostage, where she'd revealed the depths of her evil. "I'm coming with you," Thomas said. "No," she said alone. "She'll kill Hope She'll kill Hope anyway, Maggie. She's not capable of love, not even for her own child." But I had to try. Had to believe that somewhere inside Victoria, some microscopic fragment of humanity remained. I drove through Boston's empty streets at 3 in the morning, every shadow potentially hiding my monstrous daughter. The workshop was dark, except for a single light in the back office. I entered slowly, my footsteps echoing on concrete that had witnessed so much horror. There, in the center of the room, sat Victoria with Hope on her lap. My daughter's face had been altered again, more surgery, more transformation. She was unrecognizable except for her eyes, those calculating eyes that had been measuring the world's worth since childhood. "She looks like me," Victoria said, studying Hope with scientific detachment. Before I fixed myself. Poor thing, inheriting this face. "Victoria, please. She's your daughter. She's my biology experiment. Living proof that even monsters can reproduce. Did you know, Mother, that psychopathy might be genetic? This little thing could have my brain chemistry, my lack of empathy, my capacity for murder. Or she could have my capacity for love." Victoria laughed, the sound sharp as breaking glass. "Your love? Your love was a prison. Every sacrifice was a bar. Every gift was a chain. You loved us into hatred." "No," I said firmly, stepping closer. "I loved you the only way I knew how. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. You chose to weaponize it." "Choice?" Victoria stood, holding Hope carelessly, like a bag of groceries. "You think we had a choice? Born poor, raised on guilt, force-fed your martyrdom with every meal? Our only choice was to become predators or remain prey." Hope started crying soft, hiccuping sobs that made my arms ache to hold her. "Listen to that," Victoria said with disgust, already manipulating, already demanding. "Babies are the ultimate parasites, you know. They literally feed off their mothers, drain them dry, then spend their lives demanding more." "That's not true, isn't it? Look at yourself, Mother. 72 years old, dying from antifreeze poisoning your daughters gave you, and still desperate to raise another generation. You're addicted to sacrifice. You need to be needed. It's pathological." She was holding Hope by one arm now, dangling her slightly. Hope's cries became screams. "Stop," I begged. "What do you want? Money? Freedom? What?" "I want you to choose," Victoria said. "Really choose. Not the performance of choosing you've done your whole life, where you choose sacrifice and call it love. I want you to choose between your own life and this baby's." She pulled out a gun, not Thomas's service weapon this time, but something sleek and modern. "I'm going to shoot one of you. You decide which. Save yourself and let Hope die, proving you're capable of self-preservation. Or die for her, proving you're the same martyrdom addict you've always been. That's not a choice. 10 seconds. Victoria, please. 5 seconds. I stepped forward, placing myself between the gun and Hope. Shoot me. Let her live. Victoria smiled, a terrible expression on her reconstructed face, so predictable, so pathetically predictable. She raised the gun, aimed at my heart. I closed my eyes, thinking of Thomas, of my grandchildren, of all the love I'd poured into the world despite the evil it had returned. The shot was deafening in the small space, but I felt no pain. I opened my eyes to see Victoria crumpling to the ground, blood spreading from her chest. Behind her stood Nicole, holding a smoking gun, tears streaming down her face. "I followed you, Grandma. I knew she'd do this. I knew you'd sacrifice yourself." Nicole was sobbing now. I couldn't let her. Not again. Not anymore. I grabbed Hope from Victoria's loosening grip, holding her close, feeling her heart beating against mine. Victoria lay on the concrete, her blood pooling beneath her, those calculating eyes finally showing something real surprise. "Nicole," she gasped. "My daughter. You shot me." "You shot me first, remember?" Nicole replied, her voice steady despite her tears. "You thought you killed me, but I survived, and I learned. I learned to protect the people who actually love me." Victoria coughed, blood speckling her lips. "This is poetic. Killed by my own daughter. The student surpasses the teacher." "I'm nothing like you," Nicole said fiercely. "No," Victoria agreed, her voice fading. "You're worse. You're good. That's the ultimate betrayal, being good when you were born from evil." Her eyes found mine. "Mother, Tell Hope. Tell her." "What?" I knelt beside her, still clutching Hope. "What should I tell her?" "Tell her. Her mother died. Exactly as she lived. Without love." And then Victoria was gone, her eyes still open, still calculating, even in death. The FBI arrived minutes later, finding us there 3 generations of Sullivan women, one dead from her own evil, one saved by courage, one innocent of everything but existing. "It's over," Thomas said when he arrived, pulling all of us into his arms. "It's finally over." But as I held Hope, feeling her settle against my chest with absolute trust, I knew it wasn't over. It was just beginning. The real work, raising Hope to be everything her mother wasn't, started now. That night, as sirens faded and statements were given and Victoria's body was removed, I made a silent promise to the universe. This child would know love without weight, sacrifice without scorekeeping, giving without demanding gratitude. She would be free in ways Victoria and Stephanie never were. She would prove that monsters don't have to birth monsters. She would be our redemption. The morning after Victoria died, I woke to find blood under my fingernails, not mine, not even Victoria's, but somehow there, a phantom reminder of all the blood spilled in our family's name. My hands shook so violently that Thomas had to help me wash them, the water running pink down the drain while I sobbed uncontrollably. "She's really gone this time," he whispered. "Both of them. It's over." But trauma doesn't end with death. It echoes, reverberates, passes through generations like a cursed heirloom. And now we had Hope, 6 months old, innocent, carrying the DNA of serial killers. Nicole hadn't spoken since shooting her mother. She sat in our living room, staring at her hands, reliving that moment over and over. The FBI had cleared her justifiable homicide, they called it, but legal absolution doesn't wash away the weight of matricide, even when your mother was a monster. "I keep seeing her face," Nicole finally said on the 3rd day. "Not the reconstructed one, the original, the face I drew in kindergarten with, 'I love Mommy,' scrawled in crayon. How do I reconcile that child's drawing with the woman I killed?" I had no answer. How do you explain that sometimes love and necessity require us to destroy what we once cherished? That's when the package arrived. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting immediately. Doctor, package arrived. Foster, the psychiatrist who'd helped fake Thomas's death, who'd been arrested but mysteriously released on bail and disappeared. Inside was a USB drive and a note. "Your daughters paid me to document everything. They wanted a record of their genius. I think you should see what they really were." Against Thomas's protests, I plugged in the drive. Hours of video filled the screen therapy sessions with Victoria and Stephanie spanning 20 years. The first was dated when they were 25. "Tell me about your mother," Dr. Foster's voice said off camera. "She's weak," Victoria replied, "young and beautiful and utterly cold. She thinks love conquers all. We're going to prove her wrong." "How?" "By taking everything from her, piece by piece, until she has nothing left but the realization that her love created monsters." Session after session documented their descent, or perhaps their ascent, from their perspective into calculated evil. They discussed murder techniques like others discuss recipes. They laughed about victims' final moments. They role-played scenarios of killing Thomas and me, refining their approach with each iteration. But the worst video was from just 2 years ago, right after Hope was conceived. "The baby is phase 4, Victoria explained calmly. "We'll let Mother raise it, pour all her pathetic love into it, then return when it's old enough to understand and turn it against her. The ultimate betrayal, her redemption project, becoming her final destroyer." Stephanie laughed on the recording. Imagine her face when the child she saved calls her a fool for believing love matters. I ran to the bathroom and vomited until my stomach was empty, then continued retching nothing but bile and the bitter taste of realizing my daughters had planned to weaponize even their unborn children against me. "Turn it off," Thomas begged, but I couldn't. I needed to see it all, to understand the full scope of their evil. The final video was dated the week before the harbor incident. Victoria sat alone, her surgically perfected face expressionless. "If you're watching this, Mother, it means I'm dead or imprisoned. Either way, I win. If I'm dead, you'll spend the rest of your life wondering if you could have saved me. If I'm in prison, you'll visit, hoping each time to see remorse that will never come. And if by some miracle you're raising hope, know this: I've already poisoned her. Not with antifreeze, but with genetics. She has my brain chemistry, my neural pathways, my capacity for evil. You can pour all your love into her, but you're just watering a poisonous seed. She'll bloom into something that destroys you, just like I did. The screen went dark. In the silence that followed, Hope began crying from her nursery. I went to her on trembling legs, picked her up, and studied her face: Victoria's eyes, Stephanie's nose, my chin. What was she? Who would she become? That night, I couldn't sleep. I stood over Hope's crib, watching her breathe, wondering if Victoria was right. Was I raising another monster? Was love not enough to overcome genetics? At 3 a.m., Father Michael arrived. He'd been released from the hospital but still walked with a cane from the poisoning. I heard about Victoria, he said gently. I came to pray with you. Pray for what? I asked bitterly. My daughters are dead. They killed 43 people. They tried to kill me, Thomas, you. What kind of God allows that? The same God who allowed you to survive it, he replied. Who gave Nicole the strength to save you? Who placed Hope in your arms instead of leaving her with Victoria? Hope might be evil too, genetic predisposition to psychopathy. Margaret Sullivan, I baptized your daughters. I watched them grow. Evil isn't inherited, it's chosen. Victoria and Stephanie chose darkness despite your light. Hope will have the same choice, but with one difference: she'll have their example as a warning. A week later, I took Hope for genetic testing without telling Thomas. I had to know what we were dealing with. Dr. Patricia Kumar, my former colleague, ran the tests herself. There are genetic markers associated with reduced empathy, she said carefully, reviewing the results. Hope has some of them, but Margaret, I have these same markers. So do millions of functioning, moral people. Genetics loads the gun environment, pulls the trigger. Or doesn't pull it, I said, understanding. Exactly. Love, stability, moral guidance, these can override genetic predisposition. Your daughters had these markers plus trauma, plus choices. Hope has the markers, but will have different experiences, different choices. That night, I sat with my grandchildren, Nicole, David, Michael, Emma, and Olivia, and told them everything. About the videos, the genetic tests, the possibility that Hope might carry darkness in her DNA. So she might become like them? Emma asked, 7 years old and brutally direct. She might, I admitted, or she might become something entirely different. That's why we all have to help raise her, not with the suffocating love I gave your mothers, but with something different. Love with boundaries, support with expectations, affection without enabling. We'll be her conscience, Michael said quietly. The voice in her head that says, this is wrong, when genetics whispers, this is natural. Nicole, who'd been silent, finally spoke. I have those markers too. Had myself tested after shooting Victoria. But I chose differently. Every day, I choose differently. Hope can too. 3 months passed. Hope grew, laughed for the first time, at Thomas making faces, and showed no signs of unusual cruelty. But I watched obsessively. Was she crying manipulatively or genuinely? Was her laughter joy or practice for deception? Then Harrison and Marcus were released from prison. Insufficient evidence, their lawyers had argued successfully. They appeared at our door on a rain-soaked Thursday, both in expensive suits, both smiling with predatory satisfaction. Mrs. Sullivan, Harrison said smoothly, we heard about Victoria and Stephanie's unfortunate ends. We're here to discuss our rights. What rights? Thomas demanded. Hope is Harrison's child too, Marcus lied smoothly. He has paternal rights. We're prepared to seek custody. She's not mine biologically, Harrison admitted, but Victoria and I were married. That makes me her legal father in Massachusetts, unless you'd prefer to make an arrangement. Blackmail. They wanted money to leave Hope alone. Get out, I said quietly. $1 million, or we take you to court for custody. Imagine the headlines: grandmother who raised serial killers fights to keep their baby. You'll lose. That's when David, brilliant 15-year-old David, spoke from behind his laptop. Actually, you're both under arrest, again. FBI agents flooded our house. David had been recording everything, had been working with them for weeks after discovering Harrison and Marcus had continued the murder-for-hire business, targeting elderly parents while Victoria and Stephanie were imprisoned. 47 new victims, Agent Rodriguez announced as they cuffed both men. You thought you could continue their legacy, but this family has suffered enough. It ends now. As they dragged Harrison and Marcus away, Harrison screamed, "That baby is evil. You're raising evil. She'll destroy you all." That night, holding Hope while she slept peacefully, I made a decision. We would leave Boston. Start fresh somewhere. No one knew our story. Give Hope a chance to become herself, without the shadow of her mother's crimes. "Where will we go?" Thomas asked. "Somewhere small, quiet, where Hope can grow up as just Hope, not as the daughter of serial killers. She'll find out eventually." "Yes," I agreed. "But by then, she'll know who she is beyond her DNA. She'll have formed her own identity, made her own choices. She'll be able to face the truth without it defining her." We sold the house within a month, packed our lives into boxes, and prepared to disappear. But the night before we left, I went to the cemetery one last time. Victoria and Stephanie had been buried in unmarked graves no one would pay for headstones for serial killers. I stood between their graves, Hope in my arms, and spoke to the earth that held my daughters. "I'm taking your baby away from your legacy. I'm going to love her differently than I loved you, lighter, freer, without the weight that crushed you. She might have your genes, but she'll have different choices. And if there's any justice in the universe, she'll choose differently." Hope gurgled, reaching for my face with chubby fingers. In that moment, I saw nothing of Victoria or Stephanie in her. I saw only possibility. "Let's go home," I whispered to her. "Let's go somewhere you can be free." 5 years have passed since we left Boston. 5 years in a small town in Oregon where no one knows our story, where Hope has grown into a remarkable child who collects injured butterflies and nurses them back to health with a gentleness that makes me weep with relief. Today is her 5th birthday, and I'm 77 now, my body failing from the antifreeze damage, but my spirit somehow stronger than ever. Hope ran into our kitchen this morning, her dark hair Victoria's hair bouncing with each step, but her smile pure sunshine. Grandma Maggie, Grandpa Tom. "Today I'm going to share my birthday cake with Mrs. Henderson next door because she looks sad." Thomas and I exchanged glances. This child, born from evil, choosing kindness at every turn. The knowledge that genetics doesn't determine destiny has been proven in every choice Hope makes. The knowledge we've gained through this nightmare has taught us that love without conditions can overcome the darkest inheritance. Nicole, now 30, has become a social worker specializing in helping families torn apart by violence. She video called this morning from Boston. "Hope, happy birthday, sweetheart. I'm sending you something special, a book about butterflies. Did you know," Hope said seriously to the screen, "that butterflies used to be caterpillars? They completely change. Isn't that amazing, Aunt Nicole? Everything can change." The profound wisdom from a 5-year-old's mouth. If only Victoria and Stephanie had understood this knowledge that transformation is always possible, that we aren't locked into the patterns of our past. David, now 20, is in medical school, determined to become a psychiatrist. "I want to understand what went wrong with Mom and Aunt Victoria," he'd told me, "so I can help other families before they break." The education he's pursuing isn't just academic, it's deeply personal, turning our family's tragedy into knowledge that might save others. But today brought an unexpected visitor. A woman appeared at our door, elderly, frail, wearing an oxygen mask. It took me a moment to recognize her. Mrs. Henderson, the first victim Victoria and Stephanie had confessed to killing when they were 19, but she was alive. "You're Margaret Sullivan," she wheezed. "I've been looking for you for 5 years." My blood froze. How had she found us? Why was she alive when my daughters said they'd killed her? "They didn't kill me," she explained, sitting heavily in our living room while Hope played in the yard, visible through the window. "They tried the antifreeze in my tea. But my husband found me, got me to the hospital. I survived, though barely. My kidneys are destroyed. I need dialysis 3 times a week, but I lived." "Why didn't you press charges?" Thomas asked. "Because I was investigating them myself. My daughter, she didn't hire them. That was their lie. My daughter loved me." "Your daughters targeted me for practice, but they also stole my daughter's identity, used her name for their other crimes. My real daughter died in a car accident 10 years before your daughters claimed she hired them." The room spun. Even their confessions had been lies wrapped in truth. "I'm dying now," Mrs. Henderson continued, Weeks, maybe days left. But I had to find you. Had to tell you something important. She pulled out a worn envelope. Inside were photos Victoria and Stephanie at age 7, playing with another little girl I didn't recognize. That's my granddaughter, Amy. Your daughters were her only friends. She had leukemia, was dying. But your girls, before they became monsters, they were kind to her. Brought her toys, read her stories, held her hand during chemo. When Amy died, something in them died too. I watched it happen. The light went out. I studied the photos through tears. My daughters, capable of love, destroyed by their first encounter with death. They told Amy that love couldn't save her, Mrs. Henderson said, that all the love in the world couldn't stop death, so love was worthless. I think that's when they decided money mattered more, because you can count money, measure it, control it. You can't control love or death. This knowledge shattered and rebuilt my understanding simultaneously. They hadn't been born evil, they'd been broken by witnessing love's failure to save their friend. They'd chosen evil, yes, but from a place of profound pain they'd never processed. I forgive them, Mrs. Henderson said, shocking me. Not for trying to kill me, that's unforgivable. But for being children who saw too much death, too young, and chose the wrong lesson from it. The lesson should have been that love matters more because life is brief. They learned the opposite. After she left, I sat with Hope, watching her carefully arrange her birthday presents not by size or value, but by which ones need the most love. She'd placed a small, handmade card from Emma at the top because Emma worked so hard on it. "Hope," I said carefully, "what do you think is more important, having lots of things or having people who love you?" She looked at me like I'd asked if water was wet. "Love, obviously. Things break. Love fixes things." The education we'd given her, not formal, but constant, had taken root. Every day we'd chosen to demonstrate that love wasn't sacrifice but sharing, wasn't weight but wings. That night, after Hope was asleep, I found Thomas in his workshop, not the original, but a small shed where he still fixed things for neighbors. He was crying, holding a photo of Victoria and Stephanie from that birthday party where they'd first felt shame about our poverty. "We failed them," he said. "No," I said firmly. "We loved them. They failed to accept that love. There's a difference. The lesson here isn't that we loved wrong, it's that some people are so wounded they can't receive love without transforming it into poison. The knowledge I've gained through this horror is this: love isn't always enough, but that doesn't mean we should stop loving. The education of the heart continues even when students fail. The lesson isn't to love less, but to love wiser. As I write this final entry in my journal, knowing the antifreeze will claim me soon, I want to leave this lesson for Hope and anyone who reads our story. Evil isn't inherited, it's chosen. Love isn't weakness, it's the only strength that matters. And redemption. Real redemption comes not from erasing the past, but from choosing a different future. My daughters became monsters, but their daughter became proof that monsters don't have to birth monsters. That's the ultimate victory, not that we survived Victoria and Stephanie, but that Hope thrived despite them. The cycle is broken. The poison ends with their generation. Hope and her cousins will carry forward not the legacy of evil, but the knowledge that choosing love, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard, is the only choice worth making. My dear viewers of Voices of Auntie Rose, this story has been one of the most challenging I've ever shared. How did you feel listening to Margaret's journey? Does it resonate with your own experiences of family, betrayal, and the complex nature of love? I'm curious, what lessons did you take from this? How do we love without enabling? How do we maintain boundaries while keeping our hearts open? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Your insights and personal stories help our community grow in wisdom and understanding. The education we receive from life's hardest moments often becomes our greatest teacher. Sometimes the most valuable knowledge comes from the deepest pain. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to Voices of Auntie Rose and hit that notification bell. Every day we explore the depths of human experience, seeking wisdom in the most unexpected places. Like and share this video with someone who needs to hear that love can coexist with boundaries, that sacrifice doesn't have to mean self-destruction. To everyone watching, I wish you good health, joy in your daily life, and peace in your hearts. Remember, you have the power to break negative cycles, to choose differently than those who came before you. You are not bound by anyone else's choices, only your own. Thank you for joining me on this emotional journey. Until we meet again in the next video, remember, love wisely, live fully, and never stop believing in the possibility of redemption. Goodbye for now, and see you in our next story on Voices of Auntie Rose.